Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Izuku Yagi finally gets a quirk that allows him to create any quirks, part 3. So before we start, please go check out the author of this fanfic, the Ultimate one, link is in the description, also subscribe to our channel, and like this video, so let's begin the video. Day of the entrance exam. Izuku stood proud at the gate of UA as he looked at his future school. He had finished cleaning up the beach a couple of months ago. He had done so much since then. His sensei Daichi Urai had passed him in his dojo and he had taught him everything he knew and had learned 3 different martial arts styles. He had built a few items from the scrap that was made, one of his best ones being sound gauntlets for Jiro and her earphone jacks. The premise of the sound gauntlets was quite simple. Jiro could plug her earphone jacks into the gauntlets and they would amplify and redirect her sound-based attacks with unparalleled precision and power. He had also incorporated shock absorption to reduce strain on her eardrums and added a secondary feature that allowed the gauntlets to record sound waves for tactical purposes. Jiro had been overjoyed when he gave them to her, calling him a genius inventor despite his bashful protests. She could even use it in the exam as it was signed off as being used for her quirk. He stood a proud 6 feet tall, his frame a testament to the months of grueling training he had undergone. His once wiry build had transformed into a powerful, well-toned physique that balanced strength and agility. Every muscle on his body seemed to carry the story of his dedication, chiseling his abs, broadening his shoulders, and fortifying his arms and legs through countless hours of intense workouts, sparring sessions, and quirk drills. Everything on his body was the peak of physical strength. But now, as he stood before the massive gates of UA, those achievements seemed like distant memories. The weight of the moment hit him like a freight train. This is it, he thought, his hands clenching into fists. Everything I've worked for leads to today. Let's just hope that Bakugo or my siblings aren't here to see me. The sad thing was the seats were assigned so he couldn't be next to his friends and he was going to beat someone up if he sat next to Bakugo, Inori, or Ichiro. He began walking into the examination hall, his boots echoing softly on the polished floors. Each step felt deliberate, like he was stepping onto a battlefield, not just an exam. The large hall was lined with rows of seats, each section filled with hopeful students, all brimming with anticipation and nerves. Despite the crowd, the room seemed to fall into a hushed stillness as the proctors took their places on the elevated stage at the front. He took his seat thanking whoever did this that didn't have any one of those 3 next to him. He was interrupted from his train of thought when someone bumped into him in his seat. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to bump into you," said a girl with brown hair. Izuku waved her off. "You're fine. You didn't mean to," he said. "My name is Ochako Uraraka. What is yours?" she asked, sticking her hand out to him. Izuku shook her hand with a gentle smile. "My name is Izuku Yagi. Nice to meet you, Uraraka." Ochako smiled warmly. "Nice to meet you too, Yagi. Are you excited for the exam?" Izuku's expression softened as he nodded. "Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. But there's a lot riding on it, you know." Ochako tilted her head slightly, her gaze curious. "I understand. It's a big step, but I think you'll do great. You seem really focused." Izuku felt a small wave of gratitude at her words. "Thanks, that really means a lot. How about you? Are you nervous?" Ochako laughed softly. "A little, but mostly excited. I've been training hard for this too. Let's do our best." Izuku nodded at her as they both settled in there and the lights dimmed to show Present Mick on stage. As the lights dimmed, the hall fell into a hushed silence. The sound of footsteps echoed softly as Present Mick stepped onto the stage, his confident demeanor instantly capturing everyone's attention. The excitement in the room surged once again, but now there was a different kind of energy, one that came with the presence of a pro hero. "Good afternoon, future heroes." Present Mick's voice boomed across the hall, resonating with enthusiasm. "Welcome to the UA entrance exam. You've all come a long way to get here, and today is the day you put your skills to the test. But first, let me go over how this test is going to work." Present Mick's voice filled the large hall, energetic and brimming with excitement. His animated gestures matched his tone, commanding the attention of every hopeful student in the room. "Alright, listen up," he continued, pointing dramatically toward the crowd. "The UA entrance exam is split into 2 parts. A written test and a practical exam. Now we shall move on to the practical exam, as we are now done with that. So, let's get rocking and go over this. Do not be afraid to ask any questions," he said, hitting a button and a screen turned on behind him. The screen behind Present Mick lit up, displaying images of various villain bots, ranging in size and complexity. Each model rotated slowly, giving the students a clear view of what they'd soon face. Present Mick gestured dramatically toward the screen. His enthusiasm undiminished. "Alright, future heroes, let's break it down. The practical exam is all about racking up points. In your assigned zones, you'll face off against villain bots of varying difficulty levels. Here's how the scoring works. 1-point bots are your basic models, lightweight and easy to take down. 2-point bots are bulkier, with tougher armor and slightly better mobility. And then there are the 3-point bots, he said, his tone dropping slightly for emphasis. These bad boys are designed to challenge even the best of you. They're heavily armored, have a range of offensive capabilities, and require a solid strategy to defeat. "Excuse me, sir?" asked a tall boy with glasses and blue hair standing up. A light shined down on him and he asked, "What is with the 4th bot on this page?" "I am glad you asked that," he said, changing the screen to a dramatic image of a massive towering robot that dwarfed the others. Its frame bristled with simulated weaponry and it cast an ominous shadow over the mock city below. And finally, Present Mick announced, pointing toward the colossal machine on the screen, the 0-pointer. "This one is just here to shake things up. It's big, it's terrifying, but let me be clear. It's worth 0 points. You don't need to engage. Try to avoid, alright?" Present Mick clapped his hands, snapping Izuku and the rest of the students back to attention. "Alright. Any other questions?" He scanned the room, but no one else raised their hand. "Good. Then let's get this party started. Check the screen for your assigned testing zones and report there immediately. You've got 5 minutes to get to your designated bus to travel to your zone. The clock's ticking." "Looks like we are in the same testing zone based on our card," she said, looking over to Izuku. "Yeah, we should get going," he said, getting up. Izuku and Ochako made their way toward the buses lined up outside, each labeled with the corresponding testing zones. The energy among the students was a mix of nerves and determination, the sound of hurried footsteps and hushed conversations filling the air. As they boarded the bus for Zone B, Izuku noticed the seats were filling quickly. He gestured for Ochako to take the window seat and she nodded with a smile, sliding into place. Izuku sat beside her, his hands resting on his knees as he stared out the window. He had thought back to this morning about what his father said to him and his siblings. "Good job to all of you and good luck today," he said, referring to them all. He shifted his gaze to Inori and Ichiro and smiled even more. "Go out there and make your old man proud," he said, with the two of them smiling. Izuku clenched his knees in disdain towards his family. "I'll show them," he said to himself. "I'll be the best in everything I do and give it my all even when I have nothing left to give." "Those are some good words of motivation," said Ochako, smiling at him. Izuku almost forgot he was with her for a moment and nodded. "Yeah, might as well hype me up as much as possible," he said as they came to a stop. "We are here. Good luck to you all," said the bus driver. "Good luck, Uraraka," said Izuku. "You as well," she said, finding an open spot for herself. Izuku stood near the gate waiting for the go-ahead, then he showed them what he had. He knew he would have to explain his quirk, so he deliberately pointed in his request forms to meet with the staff to talk about it, knowing his father was on the staff. His training in martial arts, quirks, knowledge, and workouts lead him to this moment. This was a start, but he would make it worth it. He wouldn't lie when he said he wanted to be his father's record, which was still unknown. He wanted to see the looks on his family's face that he had a quirk all this time. He wanted to show them that he was going to follow his dreams with or without their help. He would give it his all. This was his statement to show to the world. He was here. This wasn't about the most points he could get right now, but rather how heroic he could be. His training would allow him to handle the use of 2 quirks without any negative effects. Aside from the ones that are constant, such as Brain Boost and Cell Surge. I mean the combat quirks he had. He could use 3 quirks at the same time in a short burst without problems, and maybe 4 if he pushed it, but he would have to be careful. He inhaled deeply, preparing himself. He could not wait to see the looks of his family. Present Mick's voice then cuts in, "What are guys doing? Go out there. There is only so much time." They were off to the races. Observation room. The teachers sat in their chairs waiting for the talent and the creme of the crop to show themselves to them. "I have a feeling this will be quite a year," said Snipe as he leaned in his chair. "Indeed, I cannot wait," said Nezu, sipping on some tea. "There are so many cuties already," Midnight said, licking her lips seductively. "Please don't start," said Eraserhead, sighing as he sipped some coffee, not wanting to fall asleep right now. Toshinori just sat in his chair thinking about today. "I think Inori was the right candidate for One for All. Her telekinesis quirk is going to be incredibly powerful now, as well as having some strong attacks. Ichiro even said his quirk was very similar to mine, so it wouldn't make sense for him to have it. He is a selfless kid. The two of them have been training their asses off for this. They will be the top 3 without a doubt. I wonder if Izuku passed his general course test." Of course he did, who am I kidding? The kid is smart as hell, he thought, as the test started. Izuku activated Jolt and bioelectricity encompassed his body. With precision and speed, he extended 2 strands of black whip from his arms to the street lamps and launched himself forward, the sudden burst of power startling the other examinees around him. His movements were fluid and calculated, a perfect blend of his training. He was way ahead of the pack of students now with that boost as he saw his first few targets. 2 3-pointers and 1 2-pointer. He extended out black whip and grabbed one of the 3-pointers. With his strength, he ripped the head off the 3-pointer, making it collapse to the ground. Danger sense had activated and he effortlessly ducked underneath the attack the other 3-point sent his way. He was stuck between the 2-pointer and 3-pointer and smirked as he had been wanting to try this move for a while. He started to channel and store air into the palms of both of his hands. Air palm thrust, he said, extended a hand to each of the robots pushing them into the wall, disabling them. That's 8 points. Got to keep going, he said, activating Jolt once more and using a burst of air to launch himself faster than he normally would. Ironically, he learned this move by seeing Bakugo propel himself using his explosions and realized he could do the same thing with air. Spotting a cluster of 3 1-pointers, Izuku landed gracefully and extended black whip once more. He wrapped the tendrils around the legs of 2 robots, pulling them into each other with a deafening crash. Before the 3rd robot could fire, Izuku's eyes glinted. Izuku planted his foot firmly into the ground, letting the energy from Fajin explode through his leg. The force of his kick sent the 1-pointer flying into a nearby wall, shattering it on impact. Without skipping a beat, he whipped around, scanning for his next set of targets. 11 points, he muttered, adjusting his strategy as the exam arena grew more chaotic. He activated eagle eyes and saw there were 2 more 3-pointers out in the open. He knew he needed to be faster and he launched himself at the 2 robots with immense speed. It made it look awkward, but he punched the air 10 times in a matter of a couple of seconds, storing up kinetic energy. Izuku darted toward the 2 3-pointers, his fists flying through the air with blinding speed. Each punch generated bursts of stored kinetic energy, his Fajin quirk accumulating power for a devastating move. The robots turned their attention to him, their targeting systems locking on as they began to charge their weaponry. Not today, Izuku muttered, smirking as he released stored energy. The first robot took the brunt of the punch, launching backward as he collided with the other 3-pointer, and the 2 exploded. 17, he said as he looked around. He saw there was one of the contestants holding his right arm from what looked like it was cut off from an attack by the robot, and he rushed over to him. The contestant almost fell over from the gust of wind Izuku generated. "Are you okay?" he asked, looking at his hand. "I'll be fine," the contestant stammered, though his voice was shaky. Just need to stay out of the way." "Not for long you won't," he said, holding his arm up and placing his hand on the wound. Soon a faint green glow appeared as the wound started to heal up. After about 15 seconds, the gash was healed and Izuku stood up. "You're healed now. Good luck to you," he said as his body was encompassed in lightning and he was on his way again. The contestant looked in awe as he raced back to the battle to find and get more points. Observation room. Nezu sipped his tea with a smile on his face as he saw the battles happening. "You see, this is why I love this. This is where we get to see a future candidate certain skills are in battle. For example, some students use wits and brain power to take care of their foes. Some use reconnaissance and gather intel to help them. Others may use their pure destructive power to take care of what needs to be done," said Nezu as screens of various battles played. "But the best use of all of these tactics," he finished. Toshinori looked at Inori and Ichiro, who were defeating the robots with ease. Inori was showing her strength and adaptability to one for all as she flung the robots with a wave of her hand while Ichiro nailed a 3-pointer in the face. However, he didn't see another screen of a green blur, smashing robots with ease while healing others. "Oh man, these kids are perfect," said Midnight Bitterlip as the others tried to ignore her. "They do seem a lot better than last year," said Power Loader. "Let's see what else they got before we release the big one," said Snipe. Zone B, 5 minutes left. Izuku wouldn't lie when he said he lost count of his points a while back because he decided to help a few others with Cell Surge. "Ouch. Someone help me," he heard another voice for help. This one was different, she sounded in pain and in danger. Izuku ran over to see the problem. There was a girl whose arm was stuck under some rubble from a nearby building that landed on her. She had brown hair in the shape of a mushroom and her eyes were filled with tears from what part of her eyes he could see, likely from the pain. Right behind her, there was a 3-pointer that was ready to attack. Izuku rushed toward the scene, his body crackling with electricity from Jolt and his heart pounding with determination. He channels the electricity around his body ready to aim and fire. "Thunderbolt!" he yelled out as a large green bolt of lightning headed right at the robot with a blinding flash of light. The 3-pointer was engulfed in the electrified burst, sparks flying wildly from its metallic frame. The shockwave rippled through the air, sending bits of debris scattering and momentarily disabling the robot. Izuku didn't stop there. As the robot crashed to the ground, he rushed to the girl's side, lifting the rubble off of her. "You're going to be fine," he said, as he threw the large piece of concrete like it was nothing. The large concrete slab shattered upon impact with the ground, sending chunks of debris flying in all directions. Izuku stood protectively over the girl, shielding her from the aftermath, as his body continued to crackle with electricity. His expression was calm, though his heart raced with the adrenaline of the moment. "You're safe now," he assured her softly, helping her to her feet. She wobbled slightly, still overwhelmed by pain and fear, but Izuku steadied her gently. "Just take a few deep breaths, you'll be okay." The girl managed to make a weak nod, her tears still falling, but with a hint of relief. Thank you so much," she whispered. "Now this is going to take a minute, so hold on and look at me." "What's your name?" he said, trying to get her to make eye contact. "Hey Kinoko Komori," she said, as he held up her arm. It was broken, but that was an easy fix for Izuku anyway. He activated Jolt to make sure he could protect them from any threats, as a faint green glow appeared on her arm. "My name is Izuku Yagi," he said, as he focused on his surroundings right now. "This might feel a little strange, but it won't hurt," he said, as he channeled his healing energy. The warmth spread through her arm, numbing the pain, as the bone mended itself, muscle fibers stitching back together under his touch. "Wait, won't this prevent you from getting points?" she said, trying to take her hand away. "That doesn't matter, what matters is healing, making sure you aren't going to be hurt anymore," he said, still focusing on healing her. Kinoko's breath hitched as she watched a faint green glow intensify on her arm, the pain slowly fading away under his touch. She wanted to pull away again, to argue more, but something about his calm certainly calmed her fears. His focus was solely on her, completely unshaken by the potential consequences. But she began again, her voice cracking slightly. "You could win easily if you just fought for points." "Well, that is nice. Making sure people make it out of here just fine is also important," he said, as the muscles were stitching back together now. "It will be done soon, and they will be on their way." She nodded meekly and blushed from the contact, as well as helping her. After a few more moments, Izuku withdrew his hand, the healing complete. Kinoko flexed her fingers, feeling no pain, only the strength of her own body. "It's done," Izuku said, his voice still calm and reassuring. "How does it feel?" Kinoko moved her arm experimentally, testing her range of motion. A relieved smile broke across her face. "It's perfect. I can move it like normal again. Thank you, really, thank you." "You don't have to thank me," Izuku replied. Danger sense activated, and Izuku jumped in front of Kinoko while charging another green thunderbolt, shooting from his fist at a two-pointer that tried to ambush them in the alleyway. Sparks flew in every direction, and the robot let out a sharp screech before collapsing in a heap of twisted metal. The resulting shockwave sent a brief tremor through the ground, shaking the debris around them. "Alright, good luck Komori," he said, giving a salute as he bolted once more, leaving a blushing girl behind. Observation room. Mr. Izawa had thought he was seeing something earlier from the lack of sleep like he normally had, but he kept seeing the same thing repeatedly. It was a green blur that would appear on the screen for a split second. He walked over to a screen trying to enhance a camera on Zone B. Cementus had noticed this and was curious as to what he was doing. Mr. Izawa leaned in closely, adjusting the camera feed from Zone B with meticulous precision. The image of the battlefield flickered slightly, but he was determined to get a better look. The green blur had been catching his attention, appearing in bursts of light, moving at incredible speeds. "Cementos," he said, glancing over his shoulder without breaking his focus, "what do you make of this?" Cementos raised an eyebrow, stepping up beside Mr. Izawa to examine the screen. "I noticed it too," he said, pointing to the screen. "That green flash, it's not normal. There's something about it." Mr. Izawa adjusted a few more settings, increasing the resolution slightly. The blur became clearer, revealing brief glimpses of a figure moving with almost supernatural speed. "It's like they're teleporting across the battlefield," Izawa observed, frowning. "But we've seen nothing like this before." Cementus hummed thoughtfully. "Whoever it is, they're incredibly efficient. One moment, they're in one spot dealing with a group of robots, and the next, they're somewhere else entirely." "Oh, might appear something has caught Mr. Izawa's attention, that rarely happens," said Nezu happily. "Put the contestant on screen and release the zero pointer in all zones," he said, as Izawa looked annoyed at the remark he made. "I am trying to, but the person is moving too fast to get a scan of their face to give a name," he said, as the person stopped just enough to bring the name on the screen. Toshinori looked over to the screen as he looked away from his daughter with wide eyes. "Izuku Yagi. This is your third child, correct, All Might?" asked Nezu. "Holy hell. I had to put the video at 0.25 speed just to see him normally," said Izawa. Toshinori didn't answer Nezu as he walked up to the screen to see his son. His supposed quirkless son, fighting these robots. "Yes, he is, sir," he said quietly as he watched him deal with the robots efficiently. He broke out into a cold sweat as Snipe hit the button to release their zero pointers. He had so many questions about this right now. Why didn't he tell them? Did he tell and he forgot? Why was he hiding this from them? What has Izuku been doing to train with all of this power? How did he have a quirk? His heart dropped as he thought back to a man who gave him his injury all those years ago. All for one. No, it was impossible as he had died all those years ago. He decided to remain quiet to see what the sun had in store. He did know something hung deep in his chest that wouldn't go away for a while. Confusion. Heartache. But most importantly, guilt. Zone B with Izuku. Izuku used Black Whip to throw a one-pointer into another one right across from it and wiped his brow. He had been going non-stop for the past 8 minutes from what his count was and he was wearing thin. He had trained his ass off with all these quirks, but using them all and using most at the same time was starting to get to him. 2 minutes remaining, said President Mick as the other examinees stopped to listen. He had been right and now he needed to kick it into overdrive. Suddenly, the ground beneath him began to tremble. Izuku's gaze shot upward, his breath catching in his throat. There, towering over the city, was the zero-pointer from the mock tests. The enormous mechanical monstrosity cast a long shadow across the skyline, its presence undeniable. He remembered the terror it evoked during practice, and now it was real, looming before him once more. Not now, Izuku muttered. Many of the contestants were starting to run away. He was going to do the same, but he heard something in the direction of the zero-pointer. "Help," said a familiar voice. He looked to see it was Ochako, the girl he met earlier, stuck underneath her rubble. This might have been his ego talking, but he wanted to see how strong he was. He knew he could save her, but why not take out the enemy and save her at the same time? He didn't care if there were no points for destroying this guy, but rather saving her from getting run over. Izuku squatted down and activated Jolt with green lighting surging around him. He needed to charge as much power as possible. He had been saving up some kinetic energy from earlier, but he needed more of it to defeat this thing. He used Zephyr Rush to channel air to his feet and he propelled himself forward using air blasts. He started to punch the air rapidly to store the kinetic energy he needed to beat this thing. He still couldn't get over how weird this looked, but it was something that made Fajin unique. With his fists glowing with the accumulated energy, Izuku struck the air in rapid succession, the kinetic energy amplifying with every punch. He could feel the energy crackling through his body, his muscles straining under the pressure. Despite the surreal side of him punching nothing but air, the energy he created was substantial, each strike adding to the power necessary to take down the towering zero-pointer. The colossal mechanical beast let out a low, metallic hum as it turned to face him. Its massive limbs swung towards him, but Izuku was quicker. His agile movements, combined with his rapidly increasing energy, allowed him to avoid the zero-pointer's devastating strikes. The sheer scale of the robot was intimidating, but Izuku's focus remained unwavering. He cocked his fist back as he channeled all of his different powers into one point. He held a smile on his face as he prepared to hit the robot. "Beat this, you hunk of metal," he said, aiming for his head. A deafening crack echoed through the air, sending shockwaves that rippled across the battlefield. The zero-pointer staggered backward, its massive frame shaking, as if it were struggling to stay upright. Sparks flew from its damaged circuits, and the sheer force of Izuku's strike left a visible dent in its metallic skull. Small explosions trickled across the body of the robot as he stayed in the air for a little longer as the zero-pointer was falling from being defeated, but gravity started to catch up to him as he started to descend downward at a fast pace. "God dang it. I need to slow my descent. I wish I worked on my levitation a bit more," he said, having his legs aimed toward the ground first as he was falling fast. He manipulated the air around him to slow himself down, which was helping, but it wasn't effective enough. He braced himself for the fall, but felt something slap his foot, making him float for a short moment before falling to the ground. Uraraka had used her quirk to save him from falling. It looked like she used a piece of the zero-pointer to help herself move her to him, and he was grateful for that. He got up and walked over to her as she looked like she was throwing up rainbows and helped her up. Izuku helped Uraraka to her feet, steadying her as she wobbled slightly from the exertion. The battlefield around them was a mess of debris and malfunctioning robots. The zero-pointer lay crumpled and sparking behind them, its massive form no longer a threat. Izuku gave a small nod of thanks, his breath still heavy from the intense battle. "You saved me," Izuku said quietly, genuine gratitude in his voice. "Thank you, Uraraka." Uraraka managed a weak smile, her cheeks flushed as she leaned on him for support. "You don't have to thank me. You took down that thing. It's amazing. You were amazing, and you saved me first," she said softly, her voice filled with awe and admiration. "That is it. Time is up," said President Mick as the two teens sighed in relief. "Here, what did you hurt?" asked Izuku, looking at Ochako up and down. She looked at him confused. I sprained my ankle, but what about you, your arm looks hurt. She asked as he looked down at his arm and flexed it. He just realized that he couldn't move it, so he must have overdone it on Fajin or on all his quirks. I'm fine, it'll heal, he said, bending down. Ochako leaned on the piece of metal as Izuku grabbed her ankle, and that familiar faint glow appeared over her foot and part of her leg as he focused on healing her. Good job all of you are all heroes in my eyes, said an elderly woman looking for people with injuries. Recovery Girl was surprised that there weren't more people that were hurt this year, which made her job easier. She walked over to see a girl leaning on metal and a boy helping her. There, you are healed Uraraka, he said, turning to see Recovery Girl, the woman that helped him years ago. Well, it has been quite some time since we've had a person that could heal others, she said smiling as she looked at his wounded area and frowned. He leaned in and kissed his arm with it healing almost immediately. Thank you miss, he said bowing slightly. Hey, I remember you. You are that boy that I healed all those years ago. I'd never forget that green hair and emerald eyes, she said, smiling at him. Yes, that was me that day, he said smiling at her glad to be remembered. Alright examinees clear out and see Recovery Girl if needed, said President Mick. Izuku smiled at how he did today. He knew he would pass, but he couldn't wait to see the look on his family's face when they found out he had a quirks and he was going to be in the hero course. Observation room. Holy shit, said Izawa as he kept replaying the panel of Izuku punching the zero-pointer and knocking him down. Snipe nodded, holy shit indeed. Not the first kid to take down a zero-pointer, but the first in a while to hit it in one blow. Toshinori sat in his seat with his head resting on his hands, his mind still racing with what was that. Izuku Yagi, his quirkless son, had a quirk. He didn't get it. It felt like he was spiraling right now, but he was interrupted from his thoughts by Nezu. Well, looky here, he said holding up Izuku's paperwork. It says that his quirk is called synthesist. But he will not explain unless all the US faculty is there. It says it is of high importance for all of us to know, he said looking at it with others following suit. Well, why not do it now, before he leaves, said Cementus. Great idea, said Nezu clapping his hands. Well his paws. Or whatever they are. Then that way we get to meet All Might's third child. Toshinori nodded slowly as he got up and followed the staff to the boardroom. Izawa please call President Mick to tell him to bring Izuku Yagi with him and have a meeting with him, Nezu said with Izawa nodding in return. As long as I can have him in my class this year, he said, waiting for a response from the principal of UA. Very well, just be sure to have him get Izuku Yagi before he leaves, he said, as Izawa made the call. But Izuku, after doing the best of his ability, had changed out of his green tracksuit that was slightly torn now and was ready to head out. He opened the door to the locker room when President Mick was standing right in front of him making him jump. Whoa, didn't mean to scare you there, kiddo. President Mick chuckled, his voice booming with energy. Didn't think I'd find you right outside the door. Izuku managed to make a small, nervous smile. You surprised me. Yeah, you did that to a lot of people today, President Mick said with a grin, his eyes sparkling with excitement. But I got great news for you little listeners. The request you sent to the station has been accepted and you will meet the UA teachers and you get to meet them. If you shall follow me. He said, pointing down the hallway and walking down there. Izuku nodded and followed him. He was glad that they would listen to him now. He needed to tell them so they were made aware and did not get the wrong idea. It took a few minutes, but they made it down the hall and President Mick paused him for a second. Alright, I am going to make sure that we are ready for you. Just give it a second, he said walking in the room. Izuku Yagi is just outside the door. Are we all good to go, he said waiting for a response. Toshinori stood up as he transformed into his buff form confusing the others. I thought you said you told your children of your identity All Might, asked Nezu confused. I never told Izuku, Toshinori said quietly, his voice carrying a weight of emotion. I told Inori and Ichiro, but not him. I didn't think he was ready, he said looking at President Mick. This made the others confused, but they would ask him about it later, as All Might gave him the go-ahead. President Mick looked to the door to see he was waiting there patiently. We are ready for you kid, he said, as he opened the door further. As Izuku walked into the room he saw many heroes who were teachers. He saw a man with bags under his eyes with black hair, Lady Midnight, Vlad King, his bastard of father All Might, President Mick, Cementus, Space Hero 13, Hound Dog, Snipe, Ectoplasm, a small rat animal thing, and Power Loader all in one room, and he didn't expect there to this much pressure on him. Recovery Girl was the only one not there, but he was sure she was healing other contestants. He knew he had to do this, but it didn't make it any less hard. He had a couple of goals. It was to throw subtle jabs at his dad and his family in front of these people, as well as making them aware that his quirk does not cause any confusion. The table around them was in a C shape and he was ready to tell them. Hello, Izuku Yagi, I am the principal of UA, Nezu. You wrote on your application that you need to clarify your quirk called synthesist, he said looking up at him. Izuku cleared his throat before speaking. Izuku took a deep breath, his gaze meeting Principal Nezu's steady, knowing eyes. The room was quiet, the weight of expectation palpable. He had anticipated this moment for years, yet it didn't make it any less daunting. Yes, Izuku began, his voice steady, but soft. My quirk is called synthesist. This gets complicated so bear with me, but my quirk allows me to create quirks. When I touch someone or someone touches me, their quirk's abilities, power and knowledge are transferred into someone in my brain called mind space. I do not directly copy the quirk itself, but if I so choose to, I can take certain abilities from other quirks to combine them and make my own quirks. Though I cannot copy the quirks of people that are blood related to me, he said with a serious tone. The room was silent for a moment as everyone absorbed Izuku's explanation. His words hung in the air and each hero seemed to be processing the complexity of his quirk. Nezu leaned back in his seat, steepling his fingers as he considered Izuku's explanation. Fascinating, he said thoughtfully. Synthesizing the implications of your quirk are profound. Creating quirks, selectively borrowing and combining abilities could change the very nature of heroics. Not only that, but one of the biggest things to my quirk is I need to complete certain tasks to unlock something called quirk creation points. That is what allows me to create quirks. That is why I have only made so few of them and not 100, he said gauging everyone's reaction. The silence stretched out again, this time punctuated by the weight of Izuku's words. The heroes around the table absorbed the concept, their expressions a mixture of intrigue and cautious understanding. Nezu was the first to speak again, his voice calm yet commanding. Quirk creation points, Nezu mused. That's a fascinating mechanism. It seems you've developed a system to regulate and manage the process of synthesis carefully. This suggests both a strategic mind and an admirable level of self-awareness. All Might, still in his buff form, gave a thoughtful nod. Your ability to control is remarkable. Lady Midnight leaned forward, her gaze steady. You mentioned mind space, could you elaborate on how those functions within your mind? How do you ensure it doesn't interfere with your own identity and thought process? That is where it gets tricky. I need to show you my mind space physically. I can take everyone there if you like, but you need to touch me in order for it to work. Also make sure that you are all sitting because you will go limp when we are transferred there, he said, making them confused. Lad King looked over at him. Wait, you want us to, see? Yeah. Sorry if it sounds weird. It would make much more sense to show all of you, he said. There was silence, but Present Mick got up bringing his chair with him as he smiled. I'm game, he said sitting himself in front of Izuku. I agree I would like to see it, said Nezu hopping down from his chair dragging it along with him. Are we seriously doing this? Snipe asked, his voice tinged with skepticism but also curiosity. He looked around at the others, his questions hanging in the air. Cementus rubbed his chin thoughtfully, his gaze fixed on Izuku. It's a unique approach, he said, his voice low and deliberate. But if it helps us understand your quirk better, then I'm willing to try. Mr. Izawa shrugged his shoulders as he grabbed his chair to sit in the circle with them. The others soon followed as they all sat around him. Izuku brought a chair too and he leaned back. Okay, so if you will all touch me then I can bring all of us there and it will make more sense, he said. All Might locked the door to make sure no one would enter as he sat back down. He held out his hands on his left and right side as far as he could. One by one, the heroes placed their hands on Izuku's shoulders and hands forming a circle around him. Izuku felt someone wrap their arms around him from behind and he blushed as he smelled perfume. Lady M. Midnight, what are you doing? He asked. Well, you said that there must be physical contact, so I am doing just that, as she leaned her bust into his back and he blushed further. Izuku's face flushed deeply, his heart beating faster as he felt Lady Midnight's presence behind him. The warmth of her breath on his neck, combined with the gentle pressure of her touch, added a new layer of complexity to the already surreal situation. He hesitated for a moment, unsure how to respond, but managed to collect himself as the other heroes continued to gather around him. Why yeah, Izuku stammered, adjusting his position slightly. Just make sure you're all comfortable. It's a bit overwhelming when everyone's touching me at once. Remember, it's a dreamlike state, but you'll retain control over your thoughts and actions. The heroes waited for a moment before all of them felt tired and felt a pulling feeling. All of them slumped in their chairs as they were transported into Izuku's mind space. Soon they were in the empty void and all of them looked around. Just give me a second, said Izuku as he closed his eyes. Soon the void turned into a mix between a large table, a control console, and a library. Then Chase appeared from right behind them. Izuku cleared his throat. Alright, so I have a lot to explain and feel free to look around while I do it. This is Chase. He is like an AI of this place and helps me with quirk creation. This is a table just for me to learn about the quirks that are stored over here in my quirk library. As of now I have 326 quirks stored here for me to learn about, the more use them to create other ones. This console here is for me to learn what I have to do to earn quirk creation points, as well as create my quirks. I have 1 quirk creation point as of right now. Oh, and before I forget, time moves 5 times slower here. 1 hour in here is 20 minutes out there, he said, exhaling, finishing all in one breath. Snipe, his usual stoic expression thoughtful, leaned forward slightly. So, what happens when you combine quirks? Are there ever risks? The funny thing is I can create quirks that have no risks but have smaller power. The more risks I add to them, the more powerful the quirk, he said. Snipe's brow furrowed as he processed Izuku's words. And how do you manage the potential drawbacks? Balancing the benefits and risks must be difficult. Izuku nodded, his expression serious. It is. Every quirk has its own potential dangers. For example, some quirks might have temporary side effects or unpredictable outcomes. But I've developed methods to mitigate those risks. Through thorough study and trial, I ensure that the quirks I create serve a purpose and maintain a level of safety. President Mick leaned forward. His eyes alight with curiosity. So, you're not just creating quirks for power. You're also considering their functionality and societal impact. Exactly, Izuku replied. Creating quirks isn't just about having the most powerful abilities. It's about making sure they're practical and contribute positively to the world. Hero work isn't about overwhelming strength. It's about making a difference. And that starts with responsible use of abilities. That's why the quirks I've made are not noticeable to others, or they all seem like they are similar in use, so that people don't find out I have multiple quirks. That is the main reason I asked to meet with all of you, so that you understand my situation and help me keep it secret. I didn't want to know what would happen if society found out someone can create quirks all willy. Izawa nodded at this. You are a pretty smart one, kid, he said, looking at the books. You've thought about these things 10 steps ahead. 13 leaned back slightly, her gaze thoughtful. The secrecy is a double-edged sword. Keeping such a powerful quirk hidden is essential for now, but what happens when the pressure becomes too much? Will there come a point where the need to share outweighs the risks? That is what I should also tell you as well. I have told a few others that are going to UA, as they are my friends. Their names are Fumikage Tokoyami, Ibara Shiozaki, Kyoka Jiro, Mizo Shoji, and Momo Yaoi Rozu, a recommended student. I also made a backstory for my quirk. I usually say my quirk is a special stockpiling quirk that allows me to use various energies to use them in combat and the like, he said, jazzing his finger around the table. Nezu looked at him as Chase was pouring him tea. And what of your parents and siblings? I am sure that they are proud of you for having this type of quirk. This will make you a remarkable hero. Izuku frowned slightly, but he was slightly happy at the topic they were discussing right now. He had hoped it would have gone this way, and he was glad it did. Izuku sighed as the hero's gazes were on him. He saw All Might flinch slightly as he knew what was coming. Well, that's the thing though. I am what you call a late bloomer, and my quirk appeared at 12 years old. Che said my body needed time to develop this immense power, and when I did tell my parents and siblings they didn't believe me, he said sadly. All the other heroes were in shock as All Might's smile faltered slightly as he tried to occupy himself with someone, but he felt the gaze of every hero at him. He knew that he let his son down. To be honest, I am not too mad because let's be honest, it is exceedingly rare to have someone be a late bloomer. But it still hurts, nonetheless. They even said that I couldn't be a hero, he said sadly. President Mick leaned forward, breaking the silence. Man, that's rough, kid. You've got this amazing quirk and instead of celebrating it, they doubted you. That's not what family is supposed to do. Don't listen to me. Do what you want to do. Izuku managed a small, wry smile. I've come to terms with it, mostly. It's not like they hated me or anything. They just couldn't wrap their heads around the idea. Anyway, does anyone have any more questions? If not, I get us back to the real world. That would be nice, said Nezu. Izuku closed his eyes once more and everyone was back to the real world, still holding on to Izuku. Everyone got up and away from him as they went back to their original spots around the table. He still blushed at the fact Lady Midnight was lying on him for like 5 minutes. Nezu cleared his throat gently, redirecting the focus. Izuku, you mentioned you've told some of your peers at UA about your quirk. I trust they are individuals who understand the gravity of this secret. Yes, Izuku confirmed, sitting up straighter as he addressed Nezu. They all understand the importance of keeping this a secret. Each of them has already proven they can be trusted with something as serious as this. They've been supportive and offered valuable advice that's helped me manage my abilities better. Nezu nodded, his expression thoughtful. Good. Trust is a delicate thing, but it sounds like you've chosen wisely. Be cautious, though, as secrets like these have a way of unraveling if too many people are aware. I understand, Izuku replied. I've been very careful about who I've told and I don't plan on expanding that circle anytime soon. Izawa, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed, interjected. That's a solid plan, but you should also prepare for the possibility that this secret might get out one day. It's better to have a strategy in place than to be caught off guard. That is why I have told all of you, Izuku reiterated, his green eyes flickering with determination. I wanted to make sure you all knew about my quirk, as I said earlier. If the public knew about this, things could get chaotic. His words hung in the air, and for a moment, the room was silent as the heroes considered the weight of his statement. Nezu set his teacup down and nodded. Good. Well then, I believe that I need to talk to All Might and Izuku alone, he said. President Mick smirked as he pointed finger guns at them. Ah shit, you all are now. He yelped, being pulled by the ear by midnight. The room shifted as the heroes exchanged glances, clearly curious about what Nezu intended to discuss with All Might and Izuku. However, no one dared to question the principal's judgment. Aizawa stood, stretching lazily, as he made his way toward the door. Come on, let's give them their privacy. We've got other work to do anyway. President Mick, still rubbing his ear after being dragged by midnight, huffed dramatically. Man, just when it was getting interesting. Don't keep us waiting too long for the juicy details. His joking tone earned a few eye rolls, but it also lightened the mood. As the last of the heroes filed out, Nezu waited patiently until the door clicked shut, leaving him alone with Izuku and All Might. The tension in the air thickened immediately, and Izuku shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his gaze darting between the two older figures. Well, Izuku. I think you know why we are here, Nezu said, interlocking his fingers. There was a quirk in there called One for All, right? He asked. Izuku nodded at this, which made All Might fidget slightly. Was your plan to use this quirk as your own at some point? Asked All Might. Izuku smirked internally. Yes, from what I've read it has immense potential, he said to his future principal. I thought he said he couldn't copy the quirks of people that were blood related to him. Wait, does that mean because One for All is transferred from person to person that he was able to copy and store the quirk as it was never mine to begin with, All Might thought. I see. Well, listen, I will say that One for All is a lot of hard work to manage, said Nezu. One for All is not just a quirk, Izuku. Those who wield it carry an immense responsibility, one that shapes not only their lives, but the future of society itself. Izuku's emerald eyes flickered with determination as he nodded. I understand. That's why I've been careful about even considering using it. All Might nodded along with Nezu. Alright, we'll be sure to tell me if you acquired the quirk. I will. Actually, I have some sheets about the quirks that I have right now. I have made 8 quirks and have 9 if you consider synthesist, he said, handing Nezu his sheet of quirks and all that they do to him. Excellent. Now that is all I have with you, my dear child. I need to speak with All Might here. Your results will come in a few days. Have a great day, he said, as he gave All Might a look that looked too sweet. Izuku nodded as he started to walk away. Thank you, sir, for having this meeting. Of course. Have a great day, he said. Izuku left the room. Nezu waited until the door clicked shut behind Izuku before turning his sharp gaze to All Might. The once invincible hero shifted uncomfortably under the principal's scrutiny, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced with a tense seriousness. All Might, Nezu began, his voice calm but layered with authority. What the hell did you do? All Might stiffened at his voice and transformed back to his skinny form and coughed up blood. What do you mean? He asked as Nezu stared at him harder. You didn't believe your son, Izuku. Your own son, when he said he had a quirk. Not only that. But you resorted to telling him that he could not be a hero, he said disdainfully. All Might visibly recoiled at Nezu's words, his gaunt face shadowed with guilt. His fists clenched and unclenched on the table as he struggled to find the words to respond. The room felt smaller with Nezu's sharp piercing gaze locked on him. All Might stammered, his voice cracking under the weight of his shame. I thought I was protecting him. Back then, when he was quirkless, or at least I thought he was, I wanted to spare him the pain of chasing an impossible dream. Nezu sighed, his small hands interlocking as he leaned forward. And in doing so, you crushed him. A boy who idolized you, who wanted nothing more than to follow in your footsteps. Did it ever occur to you how much weight your words carry, especially to someone who looks up to you as a hero and a father? Could you imagine how he felt when his own father said that to him? And the irony of it all is that you were quirkless before you received One for All. Nezu's sharp eyes softened slightly, but his tone remained firm. You thought you were protecting him, but instead, you projected your fears onto him. You assumed he wasn't strong enough to face the challenges you endured. In doing so, you underestimated not only his resilience, but his brilliance. All Might lowered his head, the truth in Nezu's words cutting deep. You're right. I failed him. I let my own insecurities cloud my judgment. But I want to make it right. I want to be there for him now, even if I'm too late. You messed up, Toshinori, big time. Izuku doesn't seem like he would forgive right even at all. You're using the excuse of saying you were protecting him. Tell me the real reason why you did it, he said calmly, but demandingly. All Might froze at Nezu's demand, his breath caught in his chest. The piercing gaze of the small yet commanding principal seemed to slice through the layers of excuses and self-delusion he had wrapped around himself for years. He swallowed hard, his hands gripping his knees tightly as he tried to summon the courage to speak. When he began, his voice barely above a whisper. I was afraid. Nezu tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. Afraid of what, Toshinori? Afraid of Izuku? Or afraid for yourself? All Might flinched, as if struck. He opened his mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. The truth felt like a weight pressing down on his chest, suffocating him. I was afraid, he finally admitted, his voice cracking. Afraid that he'd fail. Afraid that he would die if he went in trying, but in doing so, I emotionally neglected him for his two older siblings. Nezu's eyes narrowed, his sharp intellect catching on to the deeper implications of All Might's words. Go on. All Might's hands trembled as he gripped the edge of his chair, his gaze fixed on the polished surface of the table. His shoulders sagged, as though a heavy burden had been placed on them, his usual confident aura completely striped away. I focused so much on what I thought was best for him, he said slowly, his voice laden with regret. But I failed to see what he needed from me, as a father. Izuku was always so eager, so full of dreams and hope, and I should have nurtured that. Instead, I pushed him away. I thought I was saving him from heartbreak, from the dangers of a world that can be unforgiving to those without quirks or even to those with them. But in reality, I let my fear of losing him control me. Nezu remained silent, his sharp eyes never leaving All Might's face, silently urging him to continue. I thought if I told him he couldn't be a hero, he would settle for something safer, something less dangerous, All Might confessed, his voice growing quieter with each word. But when he didn't, when he kept holding on to that dream despite everything I said, I started to focus on Inori and Ichiro. Their quirks are very powerful, and I put my focus into that instead of him. I failed him because I was afraid to confront my own failures. I told myself I was protecting him, but I was really protecting myself from the guilt of seeing him struggle, from the fear of losing him, from the pain of watching him chase a dream I thought was out of his reach. Nezu leaned forward slightly, his expression was a mixture of disappointment and understanding. Toshinori, you've spent decades as the world symbol of peace, standing tall, as an unshakable pillar for others to lean on. But even the greatest heroes are still human. You let your fear cloud your judgment, and in doing so, you failed your son in the most fundamental way, not as All Might, but as Toshinori Yagi, his father. All Might nodded, the weight of Nezu's words cutting deeper than any battle wound he'd ever endured. You're right. I abandoned him when he needed me. It was easier to pretend I didn't see, to focus on Inori and Ichiro, to tell myself I was doing the best I could for my family. Nezu sighed softly, folding his paws on the table. Toshinori, guilt and regret are natural, but they are not enough. They will not fix what's been broken. Izuku has grown strong despite your neglect, but the scars you've left on him will not heal without effort on your part. If you want to make things right, you must act. All Might looked up, his eyes rimmed with unshed tears. But how? How do I even begin to undo the damage I've done? He doesn't trust me. I see it in his eyes every time we speak. And after everything I've said and done, I don't blame him. You start by listening, Nezu said firmly. Not as a hero, not as a teacher, but as a father. Izuku doesn't need grand gestures or empty promises. He needs you to hear him, to acknowledge his pain, and to accept responsibility for your actions without making excuses. And above all, he needs consistency. Words are easy, Toshinori. It's your actions that will show him you're truly committed to being there for him. All Might nodded, his determination hardening. I'll do it. I'll be there for him, even if it takes the rest of my life to make up for what I've done. Nezu's expression softened slightly, though his voice remained serious. Good. But be prepared, Toshinori. Izuku may not forgive you right away or ever. That is his choice, and it's one you must respect. Your role now is not to seek forgiveness for your own sake, but to prove through your actions that you are worthy of his trust. You're lucky that you get to keep your job, he said, sipping some tea. All Might sat in silence, his thoughts heavy with the weight of Nezu's words. The room was quiet, save for the faint hum of the lights above and the occasional clink of Nezu's teacup against its saucer. The sharp sting of reality settled deeper with each passing second, and All Might felt his resolve solidifying. You're right, All Might whispered, more to himself than to Nezu. I can't force forgiveness. I can't expect it to come easily or at all. But I'll prove to him that I'm here, that I'm willing to walk this path with him, no matter how long it takes. Nezu nodded, his sharp gaze focused on All Might with a gentle yet firm understanding. That's the first step. Your intentions must be genuine. Izuku isn't the kind of person who will easily forget your actions, no matter how small or significant they were. Trust, once broken, is a fragile thing to rebuild. Now go to him, he said softly. Yes sir, he said, transforming to his buff form and running out the door. Yagi residence. In the quiet hum of the Yagi residence, the warmth of the evening surrounded them, yet a heavy silence hung over the dinner table. Toshinori Yagi, now in his more modest, unassuming form, sat across from his wife and children. His eyes flickered between Izuku and his siblings, watching their interactions with a keen yet distant gaze. His heart tightened as he saw how effortlessly they shared moments of excitement, confidence, and carefree banter, while he remained a silent observer. Mom, it was so cool. I lost count after 60 points, Ichiro boasted, a wide grin on his face as he gestured enthusiastically with his chopsticks. Yeah, I lost count after 55 points, Inori chimed in, her voice a playful tease. Not bad for someone who spent half the exam day lost. Their laughter filled the room, the sound bright and warm. Toshinori couldn't help but smile faintly at their youthful enthusiasm, though the pain of his absence still lingered in his chest. He watched Izuku, who sat quietly, his gaze focused on his plate, hardly joining in the conversation. There was a wall between them, a distance that had grown over the years. Toshinori reached for his own chopsticks, his movements slow and deliberate, his hands trembling slightly. The weight of his thoughts threatened to drown out the lively conversation around him, but he forced himself to stay present. Did you do well, Izuku? His wife asked gently, her voice soft, her concern evident in the way she looked at her son. Izuku's head lifted slightly at the question, but his smile was subdued. It was okay, he said quietly, his tone void of the usual enthusiasm his siblings displayed. I passed, that's all that matters. Toshinori put his chopsticks down and stood up from the table, getting everyone's attention, especially Izuku's. Izuku was curious as to what Nezu talked to him about. He hoped he would get re-aimed out and in trouble, but he hadn't expected it to do this now. Izuku, Toshinori began, his voice steady yet weighted with emotion, we need to talk. All of us do, he said, starting to steam. Everyone panicked at what their father was doing. Dad, wait, do not do it in front of him, said Inori, but Toshinori held his hand up. No, we are doing this now, he said, as he enlarged his frame in front of Izuku. Izuku was shocked not because he transformed in front of him, but because he was finally showing him he was All Might. Just what did Nezu talk to his dad about? I'm showing you who I am, Izuku, Toshinori said gently but firmly. His voice was different, no longer the booming voice of a hero, but the softer, more vulnerable voice of a man who had accepted his flaws. No more masks. No more pretending. Inori and Ichiro watched in stunned silence, their eyes flickering between their father and their brother, unable to comprehend the gravity of the situation. They could feel the tension building in the air, as though the room itself was holding its breath. Toshinori, Inori said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. This isn't how we usually handle things. Maybe we should. No, Toshinori interrupted softly, his gaze unwavering. We're doing this now. Izuku deserves to see the truth, no matter how difficult it is. All Might's figure barely fits in the room as he stood there looking at his third child. Son, I am All Might, he said, showing him in his buff form. Izuku looked at him with a neutral expression as he continued. Years back, I was injured by a man that only allows me to stay in this form for a certain amount of time a day, so I am limited to what I can do. My quirk is known as One for All. It stockpiles power and can be made stronger with each and every user it is transferred to. Dad, you said he wasn't called Ichiro, but was cut off by his father. Shut it, Ichiro, Dad is talking now, he said, making Izuku shocked slightly, as he never told him off, even if it was for a second. Izuku, my boy, I have wronged you for many years now, and I will be the first to say this. I am sorry, he said, making Izuku's expression change to shock. Either Nezu was a smart man thing or his dad meant it. It was probably both. I am sorry for every little bit of pain and suffering that I caused you. I would be the first to say that I failed you, as a father. I remember that day now, when you told us a few years ago that you said you had a quirk. I should have believed you then. I feel immense regret for everything that has happened to do with what I did these past few years. I know that does nothing for what has happened, but I need to say it to you, he said, clenching his fist. Izuku gritted his teeth as tears threatened to fall. Wait, what, he has a quirk, said Inko looking at him. There is no way he does, said Inori with wide eyes. I am going to agree with Inori on this, said Ichiro, crossing his arms. Toshinori took a deep breath, steadying himself before continuing. His voice remained firm yet fraught with emotion as he addressed his family. Yes, Inori, Ichiro, Izuku do have a quirk, Toshinori said, his voice calm but resolute. Everyone was shocked as they looked at Izuku, whose eyes were shadowed over with his hair as he clenched his hands into fists. Do you honestly think that I would forgive you for that? Do you know how much pain I was in that my father, the symbol of peace, told me that day I said I had a quirk, that I could not be a hero? It hurt so much. He half shouted, standing up from his seat. You knew? Toshinori asked, confused, transforming back down to his skinny form. Yes, I knew. When I told you what I could do with that quirk I have. The system told me that you had a quirk called One for All, and it showed a picture of you and All Might right be next to each other. That is how I found out. I have known about him for almost 3 years now, he said, walking up to him. Toshinori stood there, speechless, as the weight of Izuku's words settled into his mind. The truth was undeniable, and the revelation hit harder than he had anticipated. He clenched his fists, his jaw tightening with emotion, trying to process the years of misunderstanding and neglect. So, all this time, Toshinori began, his voice breaking, you knew, and I still. He stopped, unable to continue. The depth of his failure felt suffocating. Yes, Dad, Izuku interrupted gently, but with a calm authority. I knew. And it hurts, every single day. His voice wavered for a moment before steadying. All of you didn't believe me when I needed you the most. This made Toshinori feel powerless for the first time in years. He was the strongest person on the planet and he felt like nothing right now, but he knew he deserved it. He deserved everything that was coming. I understand, Toshinori said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I failed you in the worst possible way. And I can't take back what's been done. But I am going to say this now. I want you to know that I understand you have no trust in me, your mom, Inori, and Ichiro. But, from this day on I am going to make it up to you. I understand that you may never forgive me, but that does not matter. I deserve everything you feel towards me. Just know that you are my son, and I will make everything up to you no matter how long it takes. Whether it is for the rest of my life or in my next lifetime. Just know that I am sorry, Izuku Yagi, my son, he said, as he started to break, as tears fell from his face. Izuku sat silently, watching his father break down in front of him. The words Toshinori spoke were filled with sincerity, but they weren't enough to mend the years of neglect and pain. For a moment, neither spoke. The weight of the silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. I don't know how to believe you, Izuku finally said, his voice quiet yet steady. Now listen, I understand that there was no physical neglect from you and Mom. You gave me clothes, food, water, and shelter. I get that. I am also mature enough to understand that yourself and the symbol of peace are different from each other. As much as I hate you for the things you and this family have done to me, I still try to model myself after All Might, as pathetic as it sounds. I still want to be a person that makes people smile and make them know that they will be okay. But the emotional neglect was unbearable. Not having your own family believe in you put me through so much pain that if I hadn't made friends, I wasn't sure what would happen with them. But something you need to understand is that you are an incredible hero who inspires billions, but you are a flawed father, he said, tears building up in his eyes. Toshinori sat, his hands trembling slightly, as he absorbed Izuku's words. The room was quiet again, saved for the occasional sound of his breath hitching, weighted down by the enormity of what Izuku had just said. His mother wiped tears from eyes watching this. I know, Toshinori finally whispered, his voice hoarse. I failed you in a way that no symbol, no title, no strength could ever erase. Izuku nodded, his gaze steady, though his eyes glimmered with unshed tears. Like you said. I seriously doubt that I can ever forgive you. I really do not see a way to. Not now anyway. But know that I was, and still am hurt, and what all of you have done for me. But I would much sooner forgive you and Mom than my so-called siblings over there, he said, pointing to the two of them who were quiet this whole time. Toshinori looked over to his eldest and middle child in wonder at what he meant by that. Inori and Ichiro knew they were in trouble, but they didn't care right now. I'm going to my room. Just know actions are what matters, not the words that come out of your mouth, he said, as tears streamed down his face, as he walked to his room leaving a silenced family, as Toshinori still wiped tears from his eyes. The Yagi family felt something that should have been felt long ago. Fractured, empty, and incomplete. 3 days later. After the kerfuffle with his family at dinner the other day, Izuku was trying his best to not be bothered by it. His family hadn't properly cared about him for years, but what was bothering him was his father sounded like he meant what he said. Even if he was trying not to be reminded of it. It still hurts to think about it. If his father truly meant what he said, he would have to put the words he said to use and show him through his actions. Maybe then he would consider it. Shortly after he went to his room, his mother came to apologize to him for almost 10 minutes. Inori and Ichiro got disciplined. They were forced to bully them about everything. His siblings were given the works. The scolding wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It was a thorough dressing down, their parents' voices ringing out loud enough for Izuku to hear from his room. For the first time, they were forced to confront the full weight of their actions, no excuses, no justifications. He was sure he heard them getting beat for their actions too. It was the first time in his life that he witnessed or rather heard his siblings get in trouble. It felt good. Not in the way of revenge, but rather good in the sense that justice was finally being served. He received a half-assed apology from Ichiro, but Inori's sound was much more sincere. Like he said before, if they prove they really are sorry, they will show him. If not, that's on them. He had been waiting for the results of UA, and they were expected today. He had been packing his room along with Inori and Ichiro. He declined any help from anyone harshly, as he wanted to be alone right now and get his mind straight. They said by the end of the day UA would come and get their stuff to set it up in their dorm rooms, along with a picture of how they had their room. It was weird, but cool that they were doing it. The knock on his door startled him out of his thoughts. He turned to see his father, in his skinny form, peeking through the doorway. "Hey, Izuku," his father said, holding a slip of paper in his hand. Izuku's heart skipped a beat when he saw the UA stamp on it. A response from UA came in, his father continued, stepping into the room and handing him the envelope. Izuku took it with trembling hands, his breath catching in his throat. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. All the years of training, the countless hours spent pushing himself to his limits, it all came down to this. "Good luck," his father said softly before retreating, leaving Izuku alone with the envelope. Izuku tore open the letter to have a little black device fall onto his bed. He fiddled with it for a moment before an image was projected from the device. "I am here, as a projection for your viewing pleasure," said All Might as he stood there. Izuku sighed, as if he somehow figured his father would do this, but not this soon. "Firstly, congratulations are in order for you to take the UA entrance exam," he said, but he looked off screen for a moment. "Wait, hurry up. I have to do how many of these? Oh god, this is going to take all day," he said to himself, but turned back to the camera. "Alright, where was I?" All Might continued on, straightening up and regaining his composure. "Ah, yes. Young Izuku, let me first say how proud I am of you for taking the UA entrance exam. It's no small feat to stand among the next generation of heroes, and you've proven yourself worthy of this honor." Izuku felt his heart race. The words were hitting him harder than he expected. He wanted to know how well he did. "Now, onto the results," All Might exclaimed, his signature smile beaming from the projection. "Before I show them, I must say this, young Izuku. You did so well in the exam that you got first place," he said, showing the top 12 scores. Izuku smiled as he took time to read the people who were placed at the top, though it didn't show everyone's scores. Though he did keep the thought in the back of his head that he was going to UA. First place was himself, obviously. Second place was Ichiro, the third was Inori, and Bakugo was fourth. Some guy called Kirishima was fifth. Izuku then smiled even further as his friends had gotten on the leaderboard. Uraraka was sixth, Ibara was seventh, and Tokoyami was 11th. He was proud of how well they all did. The screen then showed All Might showing the scores of everyone else except his, which confused him. "Young Izuku. Just for reference, this is how the top 4 scores did below you. Young Kirishima, who placed 5th, had 74 points, young Bakugo, who was in 4th, had 77, young Inori had 101 points in 3rd, and finally, young Ichiro had 103 points in 2nd, he said, turning back to the screen. Izuku was shocked, to say the least. He had stopped counting after a while, and if it was his count, it was 52, but how the hell was he first? All Might cleared his throat to speak. "You see, something that isn't known much at UA is that we categorize our points into 2 different areas. The first one is villain points. This is where it measures your ability to effectively take down the robotic foes during the practical exam. This is the category most participants focus on. The second category, however, is rescue points, awarded for displaying the true qualities of a hero, putting others before yourself, even in the face of danger. These points are not as widely discussed, but they are just as important in our evaluation," he said, pressing another button showing the total points of the scores on the leaderboard separate themselves apart. It showed Bakugo had no rescue points, but had 77 in his villain points. Inori had 81 villain points and 20 rescue points, while Ichiro had 95 villain points and 8 rescue points. "That is where you come in, my dear boy. You broke not one, but several records with the use of your strength. Firstly, let's go over your villain points," he said, showing him. Izuku's eyes went wide when he saw the score. All Might continued, as he was still in shock. 142 villain points. That is the highest score ever recorded in the villain points category in the history of UA's entrance exams, shattering my own record from many years ago, he said with proudness in his voice. Izuku was overwhelmed, to say the least. That is not all, young men. The essence of being a hero and sacrificing oneself to make sure others will be fine is what gives people rescue points. We have never seen this in the history of UA. You had 8 clips of you not only rescuing people, but taking time out of your way to heal them with your power, he said, showing the various clips from the cameras. Even when he was helping the Komori girl. That young man is heroism at its finest. That is why you not only broke this record, but you pulverized it, he said, showing his score. Izuku, for what felt like the umpteenth time that day, was shocked. You earned a remarkable 212 rescue points for 8 separate acts of heroism, setting a new standard for selflessness and bravery. You have shown what it truly means to be a hero. He had always dreamed of becoming a hero, but seeing these numbers made it feel more real than ever. Izuku's voice was steady and firm. You've demonstrated something extraordinary. Your ability to rescue others, even in the heat of battle, is unmatched. No other student has ever achieved such a high score in rescue points. This makes your total score even more impressive. Your total score is 354, the highest ever recorded in UA's entrance exams history. All Might's voice carried a tone of awe, his words sinking into Izuku's mind like a weightless dream. Be proud, young man. You not only have set 3 new records that will be here for years to come, but your actions, your heart, and your unyielding resolve have made history. So, let me be the first to welcome you to UA. Your Hero Academia. Be sure to get ready to move into your new dormitory, he said, clenching a fist to his chest before the screen cut out. Izuku smiled a genuine smile for the first time in a few days at his accomplishment. He then heard cheering from down the hall, and it was Inori and Ichiro happy they got in. He opened the door to see his mom and dad were celebrating with them. He looked away sadly, but was stopped when a hand was placed on his door. Toshinori looked at him once more as they met eye to eye and smiled. Good job, son. I'm proud of you, he said, patting him on the shoulder as he walked back down the hall. He might have felt resentment towards his father and the rest of his family, but a thought had come to him. That was the first time his father had said that to him. He was going to close his door when his mother called out to him. Wait, Izuku, he gave her a sidelong glance waiting for an answer. Great job, she said happily as she went down the hall. Yeah, that's too weird to hear, he thought as he shut the door continuing to pack his room. Ichiro looked his way down the hall, clenching the frame of the door tightly as he glared at where his brother once stood. Asshole, he muttered to himself before returning to the pack. 7 a.m. the next day. Izuku had taken a cab with all his stuff down to the UA dormitories. He found out he was going to be in Class 1A, and Ichiro and Inori would be in Class 1B, and thank God for that. He had told them he could handle himself, and he would be fine handling everything he had to move in. The paper said that today was a move-in day, and it lasted from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., so he was likely going to be one of the first ones to get there, followed by his family. Boy, we are here, boss, said the cab driver as they pulled up to the Class 1 dormitories. Izuku stepped out of the cab, taking in the sight of the UA dormitories. The buildings were modern yet inviting, blending practicality with comfort. The Class 1A dorm was situated to the left of the common area, its sleek lines and warm exterior colors giving it a homely but professional appearance. Class 1B's dorm mirrored it on the right, constructed with a similar design, but slightly different accent colors to distinguish it. The central common area connected the 2 dorms, acting as a hub for both classes to interact. Izuku stepped into the central common area, marveling at the thoughtful design that blended functionality with comfort. The lobby was expansive, its high ceiling adorned with modern pendant lights that cast a soft, warm glow over the space. The walls were painted in neutral tones with vibrant accents to add life to the room. The mix of polished wood and tiled flooring gave the area a sophisticated yet welcoming feel. At the center of the room stood a circular seating arrangement with plush sofas and armchairs arranged around a low glass table, giving students a place to relax and chat. Around the perimeter of the room, there were various stations tailored to the needs and interests of UA's diverse student body. To the left was a study area equipped with long communal tables, individual desks, and soundproof pods for quiet study sessions. Nearby, a digital notice board displayed announcements, upcoming events, and class schedules. Most importantly, it showed the top entrance exam scores with his being presented. I really hope this doesn't make me a target, Izuku muttered to himself, a nervous chuckle escaping his lips. On the right side of the lobby, a recreational zone caught Izuku's attention. It featured a gaming area with several large-screen TVs connected to gaming consoles, complete with ergonomic chairs for long sessions. Further back, Izuku noticed a cozy cafe-style setup. A counter lined with stools faced a large kitchen area equipped with coffee machines, microwaves, and snack dispensers. A fridge was stocked with drinks, and a chalkboard listed the cafe's hours and rules for using the facilities. A vending machine stood nearby, dispensing everything from energy drinks to small packs of candies, ensuring students wouldn't go hungry during late-night study sessions. In the far corner of the room, there was a relaxation area with beanbags, cushions, and even a small indoor fountain, the gentle trickling of water creating a calming ambience. Lush green plants in pots and hanging planters added a touch of nature to the space, making it feel less like a school and more like a second home. The most striking feature of the common area was the staircase at the back, which split into 2 directions, leading to the dormitories of Class 1A on the left and Class 1B on the right. Above the staircase was a mezzanine level with additional seating and a few private study rooms that overlooked the main area. Izuku could already see how this space would become the heart of student life for both classes. He imagined study groups gathering at the long tables, friendly competitions in the gaming area, and late-night conversations over coffee at the cafe counter. Izuku continued to take in the central common area, marveling at its detailed design and the thoughtfulness behind every feature. It was clear that UA had gone above and beyond to create a space that fostered camaraderie, collaboration, and comfort for its students. The dormitories weren't just a place to sleep, they were a microcosm of student life, designed to bring out the best in everyone who walked through their doors. As he looked around, he realized that he was the only one here right now. The common area served as the main hub connecting the two dormitories, but the buildings themselves had multiple floors, each with its unique layout and purpose. The ground floor of each dorm was dedicated to the fitness center, as said by the label near the door, and peeked inside to find a modest but well-equipped gym with treadmills, weights, and yoga mats, a testament to UA's focus on their students' physical well-being, as well as their academic and heroic training. As Izuku climbed the main staircase, he saw that the second floor housed the dorm rooms, some of them anyway. There were 5 bedrooms to his left and 5 bedrooms to his right, meaning that the third floor was likely the same thing. It had a comfortable and welcoming atmosphere, blending practicality with a touch of hominess. Each hallway had soft lighting, and the walls were decorated with motivational quotes from pro heroes, along with framed posters from UA's history. The wooden flooring added warmth, and the faint scent of fresh paint hinted at the dormitory's recent renovations. He looked at the slip of paper to see his room was room 206. He looked to see 2 arrows like that in a hotel. It said 201 to 205 pointing to the left and 206 to 210 pointing to the right. I don't know if y'all wanted to know this, but here are the room arrangements for Class 1A. Second floor. Room 201 Tenya Ida. Room 202 Fumikage Tokoyami. Room 203 Ochako Uraraka. Room 204 Hantasiro. Room 205 Momo Yaoi Rozu. Room 206 Izuku Yagi. Room 207 Sayu Asui. Room 208 Kyoka Jiro. Room 209 Shoto Todoroki. Room 210 Mashirao Jiro. Third floor. Room 301 Katsuki Bakugo. Room 302 Rakido Sato. Room 303 Yuga Aoyama. Room 304 Injiro Kirishima. Room 305 Toru Hagakure. Room 306 Denki Kaminari. Room 307 Ryuko Yanagi. Room 308 Mina Ishido. Room 309 Mizo Shoji. Room 310 Minoru Mineta. Izuku turned to the right, following the arrow toward room 206. The hallway was quiet and the soft hum of air conditioning filled the space. As he walked, he noticed small touches that made the dormitory feel less sterile and more personal. Along the walls were framed pictures of famous heroes like Mirko, All Might, Frostflare, and many others. Reaching his room, Izuku hesitated for a moment. His name was printed neatly on a small placard beneath the number 206 saying Izuku Yagi. It felt surreal seeing his name here, a physical reminder that he had made it into UA. He took a deep breath and slid the keycard into the lock. The door clicked open and he stepped inside. The room was the exact same as he had his room, if not just slightly bigger. That makes it pretty convenient, he said to himself. Izuku placed his suitcase and backpack near the bed, scanning the room with growing appreciation. The layout was carefully planned for comfort and productivity. To the left of the entrance was his bed, neatly made with a plain gray comforter and crisp white sheets. A small nightstand sat beside it, complete with a reading lamp and a drawer for personal items. The right side of the room featured a desk with a built-in shelf, already stocked with basic supplies like notebooks, pens, and a small calendar. Izuku immediately envisioned himself sitting there, sketching out designs for support gear or jotting down notes about quirks. A corkboard hung above the desk, currently bare, but waiting for him to pin up his plans and inspirations. The far end of the room housed a compact bathroom, complete with a shower, sink, and toilet. Izuku peered inside, appreciating the clean and modern design. The addition of a private bathroom was a luxury he hadn't expected, and he was grateful for the extra convenience. The large window dominated the wall opposite the door, allowing natural light to flood the room. It overlooked the courtyard, where he could see the view was calming, a perfect backdrop for both work and relaxation. Izuku began unpacking, carefully placing his belongings where they felt most natural. His notebooks, filled with years of quirk analysis and hero observations, found their home on the desk shelf. He redid them all so that the handwriting was clear and easy to read. He hung his UA uniform in the wardrobe alongside a few casual outfits and tucked his sneakers into the shoe rack at the bottom. As he worked, his thoughts wandered to the projects he had been brainstorming. The extra space in his dorm would be perfect for experimenting with new ideas. He envisioned setting up a small workstation with tools and materials for crafting support items. He was so focused on everything he didn't realize that there was a knock on the door. "It's Dad and Mom," Toshinori said. Izuku froze slightly, but nonetheless, he replied back. come in I guess. Toshinori and Inko opened the door to see Izuku was unpacking his things. He looked at them expectingly. Alright, what do you need? He asked bluntly, his voice tinged with impatience. He didn't want to prolong the conversation any more than necessary. Toshinori and Inko exchanged a brief glance, their expressions betraying a mix of guilt and apprehension. It was clear this wasn't easy for them. Inko was the first to speak. Izuku, we just wanted to wish you luck with everything, she said softly, her voice shaky as she clasped her hands in front of her. Izuku raised an eyebrow, his arms crossed. Okay. Thanks, I guess. Is that all? Toshinori stepped forward, his usual confident demeanor noticeably absent. Soon we know things haven't been easy between us, he began, his voice lower than usual. We've made mistakes too many to count and we're not here to excuse them. But we want to try to make things right. I don't know what to think, he said finally, his voice quieter but no less firm. You can't just say sorry and expect everything to be fine. It's not that simple. We understand, Inko said, her tears now rolling down her cheeks. But we're not giving up. Even if it takes years, we'll do whatever it takes to show you that we mean it. Toshinori placed a hand on her shoulder, his own eyes glistening. You don't have to believe us right now, Izuku. Just let us prove it. Let us try. I'll think about it, he said, turning to them. Toshinori reached into his suit jacket and handed him an envelope. Here is some money for if you need anything like books or any of that. It probably doesn't mean much, but we wanted you to have it. Izuku stared at it and it had $1,000 which shocked him slightly, though he didn't show it. Even if his superhero-themed notebook cover business was earning him almost $8,000 in profit a month now, this was something he didn't expect from them. Thanks, Izuku said, his voice flat but sincere. He wasn't sure how to feel about it, still caught between the resentment and the small, flickering hope that maybe they were really trying to make things right. We get out of your hair. Your sister and brother are settled in. I know they didn't treat you right in the least bit, but keep each other safe. You don't have to if you don't want to because from what they told us it's messed up, he said, as he shut the door. Izuku stared at the envelope for a little longer before putting it down. He wanted to explore the rest of this place. He made his way to the third floor and he was slightly disappointed as there were another 10 rooms likely because each class had 20 students. He did note that Tokoyami, Jiro and Momo were all on his floor which made him happy. He looked down below to see Inori and Ichiro were exploring the place too and sighed as he looked at them. Now yes, he resented them, but they were still siblings. It's not like he wanted them to die or anything like that, but he wanted them to know how much they fucked up. He felt something in his pocket, as if it was a phone ringing with the name Kyoka Jiro, Rockstar, on it. He smiled as he answered. Hello, he answered. Dude, are you here yet? We just pulled up now, she said, as he heard a car door shut. Yeah, I am here. I was exploring the place, he said, as he briskly walked down the stairs. Well, come down then. I have no clue where my room is, she said. Didn't you get a paper? He asked confused. I lost it, she said, sounding sheepish. Okay, I'll be down in a minute, he said, as he hung up the phone. Izuku was tempted to use one of his quirks to help him down, but wasn't going to test that out if he got in trouble. When he reached the lobby, he immediately spotted Kyoka near the entrance. She stood with her luggage, her earphone jacks dangling casually, and her parents were chatting. Kyoka noticed Izuku approaching and waved him over, a grin on her face. Hey, there you are. Took you long enough, she teased, adjusting her guitar case on her back. Izuku chuckled, scratching the back of his head. Sorry, I was trying to get familiar with the place. It's a bit of a maze here. Oh my gosh, Izuku, said Mika coming up to him and hugging him. Izuku blushed at the unexpected hug but accepted it anyway. If you get any taller, I won't be able to hug you properly, she said, still squeezing him. Izuku gently patted Mika on the back, still a bit flustered. It's not like I can control my height, he said with a nervous laugh. Mom, you are going to make him implode, said Jiro tapping her foot in annoyance. Oh, Jiro, stop it. It's been months since I saw him. It's like a couple of years ago he was much shorter than you, and now he is a giant, she said breaking the hug. 6 feet tall is not that tall Mrs. Jiro, said Izuku scratching the back of his neck. Oh, don't be so modest, and I've told you to call me Mika, she said waving her hand. Kyotoku put a hand on his wife's shoulder. Honey, let's be calm about this and get her to her room so she can settle in properly, Jiro's dad said with a gentle smile, steering Mika back a little. You don't want to overwhelm the poor guy. Yeah, let's get going before my mom decides to embarrass me even more, Jiro said, picking up her guitar case and giving her mom a pointed look. Izuku walked his way up the stairs to show them her room. What's cool is we are on the same floor, you are a couple of doors down from me. Actually, Tokoyami and Yaoi Rozu are on this floor as well, he said, as they got to the large hallway. That's cool, she said excitedly. They said they were on their way. I'm glad that all of us are in the same class. It is a shame that Shiozaki isn't though, she said, as she got to the door with her nameplate on it. She opened it to see it was almost the exact way she had her room. How the heck did they get the room exactly the same, said Mika walking in along with Jiro. Izuku was about to walk in when he was stopped by her father who put a hand on his shoulder. Izuku got nervous and turned to him. Sir, I'm sorry if I did anything to you or Jiro, he said trying to stay calm. What, no? I just needed to talk to you about something, he said, shutting the door to her room so they were alone in the hallway. Izuku gulped thinking he still did something wrong, but Kyotoku had a different look on his face. Listen, kid, I've known you for a few years now, and you being Kyoka's friend has done wonders for her. She is not always the easiest person to get along with, Kyotoku continued with a chuckle, his voice calm but sincere. She's headstrong, a little rough around the edges, but ever since you two became friends, I've seen her grow in ways I didn't think possible. Izuku relaxed slightly, though he still felt the weight of the conversation. I don't think I did anything special, sir, he stammered, scratching the back of his head. Jiro's amazing on her own. She doesn't need me to. Kyotoku held up a hand, cutting him off gently. That's exactly why I wanted to talk to you. You see her as her own person, and that means more than you probably realize. She's a strong kid, but even strong people need someone in their corner. Izuku's face grew warm, and he fidgeted nervously. I just try to be a good friend. I don't want to let her down. You won't, Kyotoku said firmly. But I'm going to ask something of you, Izuku. You're not just a friend to Kyoka. You're one of the few people she genuinely trusts. Keep being that person for her. I think you are a great kid, and I have grown to like, which is very rare for anyone who was a friend to Jiro in her younger years. And if you ever find yourself in trouble or need advice, you can come to me or Mika. Consider it an open door policy. Izuku's eyes widened at the offer. Thank you, sir. That really means a lot. Kyotoku smiled warmly. You're a good kid, Izuku. I don't say that lightly. But the last thing I ask of you is this, he said quieter than before, he said looking at him in the eyes. What's that, sir? He asked curiously. That you protect our little girl, he said sincerely. She is all we have in this world. Kyotoku paused, his eyes steady but filled with emotion. She's our everything. I know she's strong, but the world can be harsh. If things ever get tough, promise me you'll look out for her. Be the kind of friend she can lean on when it matters most. Izuku swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the request settle over him. He nodded firmly, his green eyes meeting Kyotoku's. I promise her. I'll do everything I can to protect Jiro and be there for her. You have my word. I would have done that even if you didn't ask. Kyotoku's expression softened and he patted Izuku's shoulder. That's all I needed to hear. Thank you, Izuku. With that, he opened the door and stepped back into the room. Inside, Mika and Kyoka were busy arranging the furniture. Mika was fussing over the placement of Kyoka's desk lamp, while Kyoka tried to convince her mother to leave it as it was. Mom, it's fine. I don't need it angled like that. But the lighting is better this way, Mika argued, holding the lamp in position. Honestly, Mika, let her handle it, Kyotoku said with a chuckle, stepping in to defuse the situation. You don't want to smother her. Mika sighed dramatically, but relented. Fine. I'll leave it alone this time. Kyoka rolled her eyes playfully. Thank you, Dad. Mom, you don't have to turn this into a home makeover show. Izuku stood by the door, watching the family dynamic with a smile. It was heartwarming to see how much they cared for each other, even if it came with a bit of chaos. After a few more minutes of organizing, Mika turned to Kyoka and pulled her into a tight hug. Alright, we'll get out of your hair now. But don't forget to call us, okay? And eat properly. You're too skinny. Mom, I'm fine, Jiro said, though she returned the hug with a small smile. I'll call. Don't worry. Kyotoku gave Jiro a quick hug as well, ruffling her hair affectionately. Take care, kiddo. And remember, we're just a call away if you need anything. With one last wave, Mika and Kyotoku left the room, leaving Jiro and Izuku alone. Kyoka flopped onto her bed with a sigh, staring up at the ceiling. Finally, I love them, but they can be a bit much sometimes. Izuku chuckled, leaning against the doorframe. They just care about you. It's kind of nice. Yeah, I know, Kyoka admitted, sitting up and looking at him. Thanks for putting up with all that. I know my mom can be a lot. It's no problem, Izuku said, waving off her concerns. Your family's really nice. It's obvious how much they love you. Yeah, I guess. Oh, we should go wait for Ibara, Momo, and the others, she said, getting up and grabbing his arm to drag him downstairs. As they made their way back downstairs, Kyoka kept a firm grip on Izuku's arm. Her pace was brisk, almost like she was eager to escape any lingering awkwardness from her parents' departure. Izuku couldn't help but smile at her determination, though he noticed the faint blush dusting her cheeks. You're really in a hurry, huh? Izuku said, glancing at her. I just don't want them to get here and think I abandoned them, Jiro replied, brushing off his comment but not releasing his arm. Besides, it's better than sitting in my room while my mom texts me instructions on how to decorate. Izuku chuckled. Fair point. When they reached the lobby, they found Tokoyami and Yaoi Rozu already there, standing near a cluster of couches. Tokoyami was as stoic as ever, his sharp gaze observing their approach, while Momo greeted them with a warm smile. Oh, Jiro. Yagi. You're already here. Momo called out excitedly. Yeah, we are. You guys are on the same floor so that is cool, said Jiro, as she and Momo hugged each other. Same floor? Momo repeated with a delighted smile as she stepped back from the hug. That's wonderful. It'll make it so much easier for us to meet up and study or just hang out. Definitely, Jiro agreed, crossing her arms with a smirk. Though I'm not sure how much studying Tokoyami's going to let us do if he's busy brooding in the corner. Tokoyami raised an eyebrow, his expression unchanging. Brooding is a necessary part of understanding the abyss, he said in his usual dramatic tone, but I would not hinder a study session. Knowledge feeds the shadows, after all. Izuku sighed as he walked over to his dark shadow friend. It's okay, Tokoyami. I am here to brighten up your day, he said, nudging him slightly. Tokoyami blinked at Izuku's attempt at humor, his stoic expression barely shifting. I do not require your light, Yagi, he replied calmly, though the corner of his mouth twitched, betraying the smallest hint of amusement. But I appreciate your effort. Izuku sighed, I thought that was a good one, he said shyly looking at the ground. Jiro couldn't help but chuckle at Izuku's reaction, nudging him playfully with her elbow. Hey, don't worry. Tokoyami's not one to crack a smile easily. She winked at Tokoyami, who merely raised an eyebrow in response, his expression unreadable. Momo smiled warmly at the exchange. Her tone lighthearted as she joined in. It's the thought that counts, Yagi. Besides, I'm sure you're brightening up his day in ways we can't see. Izuku looked at Tokoyami who still had an unreadable expression but was amused at Izuku, trying to make him laugh. Anyway, should we get going to your rooms then or just wait then or, said Jiro adjusting her earphone jacks. Tokoyami and I will go and put up our stuff. You guys can wait here for us, said Momo. As Tokoyami began walking away with Momo, his usual composed and brooding demeanor intact, Izuku called out, unable to resist an attempt at humor. Hey Tokoyami. Izuku said, his voice carrying a mischievous lilt. Tokoyami stopped and turned slightly, his sharp gaze settling on Izuku. Yes Yagi. Izuku grinned sheepishly, rubbing the back of his neck. If knowledge feeds the shadows, does that mean your brain is on a strict no-light diet? For a brief moment, there was silence. Jiro and Momo froze, their expressions a mix of surprise and stifled laughter. Even Dark Shadow, peeking out from behind Tokoyami's shoulder, made a curious chirp-like noise. Then, Tokoyami turned fully, his face as stoic as ever, though there was an unmistakable glint of amusement in his eyes. Careful, Yagi, he said in a low voice. Those who jest at the shadows often find themselves swallowed by them. Dark Shadow nodded dramatically in agreement, its voice deep and ominous. Swallowed whole. But I like the joke at least, he said giving a thumbs up. Izuku let out a relieved laugh, scratching the back of his head. Thanks Dark Shadow. At least someone appreciates my humor. Jiro chuckled as Momo and Tokoyami backed away. Dude, Tokoyami may never laugh. I would just stop while you are ahead, she said, dragging him over to the couch. Izuku allowed himself to be dragged to the couch by Jiro, his face still flushed with a mix of embarrassment and amusement. I don't know, he said with a sheepish grin. I think I'm getting closer. Did you see that almost smile? It was there for like half a second. Jiro laughed, shaking her head. You're hopeless. But hey, I'll give you points for persistence. If anyone can make Tokoyami laugh, it's probably you. Or Dark Shadow, apparently. Izuku flopped down onto the couch, resting his hands on his knees. Well, if I can brighten his day, even a little, I'll take that as a win. Jiro pulled out her phone and gave it to Izuku. What the heck is this for? Free phone or something? Jiro smirked, nudging Izuku with her elbow as she handed him her phone. No, you dork. I need you to charge it with your electricity, she said looking at him expectingly. Izuku just looked at her with a weird look. I don't know, you sure pulled on me pretty hard earlier, then you told me to give up on making Tokoyami laugh, then there's the times where you stab me with your jacks, he said, starting to go on and on. Jiro sighed dramatically, crossing her arms and raising an eyebrow at Izuku's mini rant. Oh, come on, Yagi. Don't be so sensitive. You know what, he said, getting ready to activate Siri. I'll just call you mom really quick, he said. Jiro's eyes widened in mock horror as she reached out to snatch her phone back. Whoa, whoa, whoa. No need to bring my mom into this, Yagi. Izuku smirked, holding the phone just out of her reach. Why not? She seems like a nice lady. I'm sure she'd love to hear about how you've been treating me." Giro groaned, dropping her hands dramatically to her sides. "You're the worst, you know that. I ask for one tiny favor and suddenly it's a hostage negotiation." Izuku shook his head. "You know, this is the one time that I decided to tease you ever and you're freaking out about it." "Fine, I'll charge your phone," he said, activating Jolt. Giro crossed her arms, watching as Izuku's quirk activated, sending a small spark of electricity into her phone. She couldn't help but smirk at his over-the-top antics. "You know, Yagi, for someone who claims to be so nice, you've got a surprisingly mischievous streak." Izuku chuckled softly as he handed her the fully charged phone. "Hey, I can be nice and still have a little fun every now and then. Besides, you've been teasing me non-stop. It's only fair I get a turn." Giro tilted her head, pretending to consider his words. "Fair enough. But don't think this means I'm going to go easy on you in the future. I've still got plenty of material to work with." "Great," Izuku said dryly, running a hand through his hair. "Something to look forward to." Momo and Tokoyami eventually came back down to chat with them. Soon the lobby was flooded with guests and Shoji and Ibara showed up, but Izuku started to get a bit uncomfortable. He was fine with them as they had been friends for years and he was comfortable with them, but with all these new faces, it was going to be rough for a bit. He looked over at his friends and got up from his seat. "I am going to walk around for a bit," he said, thinking it was a good excuse. Shoji formed a mouth on one of his hands. "Sounds good. We will be here if you need us." Izuku nodded appreciatively at Shoji before heading toward the quieter hallways branching off from the bustling lobby. The low hum of conversation and laughter faded as he walked, replaced by the comforting stillness of the empty corridors. He let out a deep breath, rolling his shoulders to release some tension. "Thank God," he said as he ran a hand through his hair as he leaned against the wall. He was going to relax there for a bit, but he heard something behind him. "Eku," said Bakugo in an annoyed voice. Izuku turned around to see him standing there with an annoyed look on his face. "Yes, Bakugo, do you need something?" he asked. "How did you do it?" he said, gritting his teeth. "What?" he asked, confused, making him madder. "I said how did you do it? Get an all-time record for the entrance exam. You didn't even have a quirk. Were you just hiding it all these years?" Izuku blinked in surprise, his eyes widening slightly at Bakugo's blunt question. He wasn't expecting this confrontation, but he quickly tried to regain his composure. "If you want an honest answer, then yes, I was. To put it simply, you and my siblings treated me like shit. I saw no point in wanting to be around," he said bluntly. "What the hell are you talking about?" Bakugo growled, taking a step closer, his tone more demanding than before. "Did you not hear the words that came out of my mouth? You treated me like shit. Plain and simple. When we were younger, I couldn't wait to see what you would do with your quirk. I knew you would be a good hero. I figured the same with my siblings. But you three decided to take out on me someone whose quirk didn't come in until 3 years ago. Then all I saw was a person who was constantly mocked for something I couldn't control. You all treated me like I didn't matter, like I was just a waste of space. And you know what? I believed it for a long time, but in the end, I don't care what you think about me. I know what value I can give," Izuku said, his voice steady but carrying the weight of years of pent-up frustration. Bakugo gritted his teeth and clenched his hands. "You fucking bastard," he said, charging at him. Before he could do anything, Bakugo had been restrained with wrappings. "My quirk, where the hell did it go?" he yelled out, but down the hallway Mr. Aizawa stood there holding him back from attacking Izuku. Mr. Aizawa stood motionless, his usual calm and composed demeanor in place, though there was a slight hint of concern in his eyes as he looked at Bakugo. "You're not going to solve anything with violence, Bakugo," he said, his voice firm yet patient. "Not here and not like this." Izuku watched the scene unfold, his heart pounding in his chest. This wasn't how he imagined things would go. A part of him wanted to back away, to let Bakugo go off on his own, but there was another part of him that stood firm, unwilling to let his years of silent suffering be dismissed again. He had to see this through. "Let me go." Bakugo snarled, thrashing Aizawa's grip. "I'm going to make him regret this, damn it. We are not fighting." Yagi got in fair and square. "You try something like this again, and there will be consequences," he said with red eyes, as Bakugo still tried to struggle. Bakugo glared at Izuku before stopping himself. Bakugo's glare burned into Izuku, his chest heaving with anger. For a moment, it seemed like the tension would snap and things would spiral out of control again. But Bakugo, to his credit, slowly stopped struggling against Aizawa's grip, his eyes narrowing, though he made no attempt to hide the contempt he felt. Aizawa tightened his hold on Bakugo, his voice firm and authoritative. "I'm giving you a choice, Bakugo. You can walk away from this with some dignity intact, or you can keep fighting and face the consequences. It's your call." Bakugo's fists were clenched, his breath still heavy, but he didn't respond immediately. He didn't want to admit it, but he knew Izawa was right. There was nothing to gain by continuing this confrontation, especially in front of everyone else. After a few long moments, Bakugo snorted in frustration and pulled himself free from Izawa's hold, stepping back. TCH. You're lucky I don't want to deal with this right now, he spat, turning on his heel and storming off down the hallway. Thank you Eraserhead, said Izuku, as Mr. Izawa retracted his scarf. I'm surprised you knew my hero name. Not many do, he said walking up to him. What are you doing back here anyway? Izuku looked at him and sighed, there were a lot of people out there. I was overwhelmed. I mean this dorm is going to hold 40 students and I thought I could handle it, but it just feels different. That's fine, but in the hero world you will need to overcome this with the media and all that. So, just go back out there, he said, stepping out of the way. Besides, tomorrow will be the first day of class. You're right, Izuku said, his voice more certain now. Thanks again, he said going back out there. He made it back to the group as they were chatting with each other. Good, you're back, said Ibara happily. Izuku smiled at Ibara's welcoming tone, relieved to return to the group. The tension from his earlier conversation with Bakugo had left him drained, but being surrounded by his friends made it a little easier to push through. As he approached the group, Momo waved him over, her usual smile back in place. Back from your little adventure, huh? She said, giving him a playful nudge. Izuku chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, you could say that, he replied. The rest of the night revolved around Izuku going around and forcing himself to talk to as many people as he could. He got to know everyone's names in Class A and some of Class B. Though he did in the way he heard it from other conversations. Aside from his friend group, he hadn't talked to anyone else except Uraraka. She was very bubbly from what he could tell, and he was happy to see the girl he helped out in the exams called Komori, but when he approached her was blushed and scooted away. He didn't get it, but didn't want to overwhelm her. He checked his phone to see it was 10 o'clock and thought it was time for bed. Quite a few people had gone to their rooms actually, and he decided to, as well. Izuku paused, as Tsuyu Asui assumed that was her name, the girl with green hair and large, expressive eyes, walked up behind him. He hadn't expected to be approached by her so late at night, but her presence was always calming. As she caught up to him, she gave him a friendly wave, her tongue still sticking out slightly as she approached. Hey, you're Izuku Yagi right? She asked. Yeah, it is. Nice to meet you, he said, shaking her hand. I noticed you are not much of a talker are you, she said, making him look away. I am, just not with people I don't know that well, sorry, he said scratching the back of his head. Sai looked at him with a slight tilt of her head, her tongue flicking out slightly as she observed him. Ribbit, it's fine. It's not easy to talk to so many new people, especially when there's a lot of pressure. I get it. But you seem to be handling it well so far. Izuku felt a small sigh of relief at her understanding. Thanks Asui. I guess it's just a lot. All these new faces, trying to remember everyone's names, and then there's all the stuff with the first date tomorrow. It's overwhelming. Call me, Sue. But yeah, it should be fun for tomorrow. I wonder what we'll do, she said putting a finger to her chin. Sorry Asui. My guess is that we will do a mix of Class A and B, he said, rubbing the back of his head as they got to their floor. She gave a deadpan look as he called her Asui again. She smiled and shook her head, a soft chuckle escaping her lips. You can just call me Tsu. It's easier that way. No need for all the formalities. Izuku chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his neck again. Ah, right. Asui. Sorry about that. You did it again, Ribbit, she said bluntly. Izuku froze, his face turning a bit red as he realized he'd made the same mistake again. Ah. I mean, Tsu. I'm really sorry, he said, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. It's okay, she said, placing a hand on her door. Oh yeah, by the way, are you a loud neighbor? Izuku blinked, caught off guard by the question. A loud neighbor? He repeated, a bit confused. I don't think I am, I mean, I don't really talk that much, so I don't think I'd be noisy. Sue raised an eyebrow, her expression a mix of curiosity and amusement. I mean, not like someone who would blast music or anything, but some people are naturally louder without realizing it. You seem like you're more of the quiet type, but it's always good to check, especially in dorms. The only reason I ask is because I have 2 younger siblings, and they're pretty loud. Oh no, I'm not like that, he said, waving it off with her nodding. Sue gave him a knowing smile. It's fine. I just wanted to be sure. You never know about dorm life. Some people have different habits, and living close to others can make a difference. I'll just have to make sure my siblings don't get too loud when they visit. She paused for a moment, then added, but hey, as long as you're not going to be jumping jacks at 3 AM or something, we're good. I think they said that all the rooms have a pretty good soundproofing system, so we should be good in that department, he said, giving a thumbs up. Sue smiled at his reassurance, clearly relieved. Well, that's good to know. Anyways, good night, Yagi, she said, as she closed her door. Good night, Asui. I mean Sue. He said, remembering to correct himself. Izuku opened his door, but stopped as Momo opened hers and peered her head out. Hey, Yagi, she asked. He turned to her, wondering why she was still up. What's up, Yaoi Rozu? This is embarrassing, but could you help me with moving a dresser, she asked. Izuku blinked, surprised by the request. Sure, Yaoi Rozu. No problem, he said, stepping back out into the hallway. Is it in your room? Momo nodded, a sheepish smile on her face. Yes, I was trying to rearrange things, but it turns out the dresser is a bit heavier than I expected. I didn't want to wake anyone by making too much noise dragging it. Izuku scratched the back of his head, still a little nervous, but glad to help. It's no trouble. Lead the way. Momo opened her door wider, allowing him to step inside. He noticed Jiro was lying on her bed listening to music with her earphone jacks, but her room was immaculate, as he'd expected, but there was a noticeable gap where the dresser had been moved partway across that was angled awkwardly, stuck halfway between the corner and the window. Momo gestured to it with a slight laugh. Momo chuckled softly, gesturing at the awkwardly positioned dresser. As you can see, I might have overestimated my ability to move it alone. Jiro offered to help, but she didn't. She glanced at her friend, who was lying comfortably on the bed with her music blasting. Jiro gave a lazy wave, not even bothering to pull out her earphones. You've got it under control, Yaoi Rozu, she said with a smirk. Besides, Yagi here looks like he can handle it. Izuku smiled nervously, feeling the weight of the task as he stepped closer to the dresser. I'll do my best. Where do you want it? By the window, Momo replied, her tone brightening with relief. I thought it would be a better spot for studying, but once I started moving it, I realized it was heavier than I expected. Izuku crouched down and tested the weight of the dresser. It was indeed solid and sturdy, but with some effort, he figured it wouldn't be too difficult to move. He bent over and picked it with not much effort, making Jiro and Momo shocked. I sometimes forget you jacked, said Momo, blushing in embarrassment at how easily Izuku lifted it. He didn't even use a quirk. Izuku chuckled nervously, feeling a little self-conscious under their surprised gazes. Yeah, I guess all the training has paid off, he said, scratching the back of his neck while holding the dresser effortlessly. Where exactly do you want this, Yaoi Rozu? Momo quickly recovered from her embarrassment, pointing toward the window with a soft cough. Over there, next to the desk, please. Thank you so much, Yagi. Izuku nodded and carefully carried the dresser across the room, positioning it exactly where Momo had indicated. He set it down gently, ensuring it didn't scrape against the floor or bump into the nearby furniture. How's that? He asked, stepping back to admire the arrangement. Momo clasped her hands together, clearly pleased. That's perfect. Thank you so much. I couldn't have done it without you. Proud of you, Izuku, we make a good team, said Jiro, giving a lazy thumbs up. Izuku sighed as he charged up Jolt in his finger and touched her, feeling a shock making her jump. Jiro yelped and bolted upright, glaring at Izuku with wide eyes as she rubbed her arm where he had lightly zapped her. What the heck, Yagi? She exclaimed, her usual laid-back demeanor replaced with a mixture of shock and annoyance. She was blushing slightly, whether from embarrassment or something else, but she had it visible on her face. Jiro stood up, stretching her arms with a mischievous glint in her eyes. Getting bold now, huh? Let's see how far that backbone goes, she teased, her earphone jacks twitching slightly, as if ready to retaliate. Izuku immediately held up his hands in mock surrender, his nervous chuckle betraying his attempt to stay calm. Wait, Jiro, it was just a joke. No need to escalate this. Momo, observing the exchange with a bemused smile, interjected, Now, let's not turn this into an all-out battle in my room. I just got it organized. She glanced at Izuku, her tone half serious. Although, Yagi, you might have asked for this one. Jiro smirked, leaning against the edge of the bed. Oh, don't worry, Yaoi Rozu. I won't wreck your room this time. She turned her attention back to Izuku. But Yagi, you better watch your back. Payback's coming when you least expect it. Izuku laughed nervously, scratching the back of his head. Duly noted. I'll make sure to sleep with one eye open. Good call, Jiro said, crossing her arms. You never know when I might strike. Momo let out a soft laugh, shaking her head at their banter. Alright, I think that's enough excitement for one night. Yagi, thank you again for helping with the dresser. I really appreciate it. You're welcome, Yaoi Rozu, Izuku replied with a small bow. I'm glad I could help. Jiro twirled her earphone jack as she leaned against her bed looking at Izuku with a slight blush. You know, Izuku. I'm sure we wouldn't mind if you called us by our first names. We've known each other for almost a few years now. Izuku blinked at Jiro's unexpected suggestion, his nervous chuckle returning as he rubbed the back of his neck. Oh, I guess I just thought it was more polite to use last names. I didn't want to be too familiar. Jiro smirked. Her blush still faintly visible as she twirled her earphone jack around her finger. Polite, huh? That's sweet and all, but it's kind of weird to keep calling us by our last names after all this time. Don't you think, Momo? Momo tilted her head thoughtfully, then nodded with a soft smile with a faint tinge of pink on her cheeks. Jiro does have a point. We've been classmates for a while now, and we're living together in the dorms. First names might help foster a closer bond. Izuku's face flushed at their reasoning, but he couldn't deny the logic. Calling them by their first names felt oddly intimate, yet appropriate given how much time they spent together. Oh okay, he stammered, his voice quieter than usual. I'll try Kyoka and Momo. Jiro grinned, clearly pleased. There you go. See? That wasn't so hard. You'll get the hang of it. Momo's soft smile grew, her tone encouraging. Thank you Izuku. It's a small change, but it feels more personal. I think it's a step in the right direction. Izuku nodded, feeling a mix of nervousness and pride. Thanks. I guess I just didn't want to overstep. You're fine, Jiro said with a playful nudge to his arm. Okay, I am going to go to bed, he said waving to them. Good night Izuku, they said in unison as he shut their door. Entering his room, Izuku closed the door softly behind him and let out a small sigh of contentment. He changed into his pajamas and the quiet of his room allowed him to reflect on the day. He climbed into bed, pulling the blanket over himself. He pulled out his phone and looked over at his dad and his contacts. He decided to text him. Izuku. For the sake of you knowing, I am going to make it my own, he typed sending it out. It showed that he had read the text, but it took him a while to respond. He saw the text bubble and nodded at the text. Dad. Just know that it's a lot of power. If you need help, I'll be on campus. Good night, he said. Izuku sighed as he put his phone down and looked up to the ceiling. He went into his mind space and saw Chase sitting at the table. Well good evening, sir, he said standing up. What can I get for you, he asked, walking over to the screen. Did it work, he said walking up to the screen. Chase nodded as he pulled up a picture of his sister and All Might. Indeed, it did. You see you were also able to copy one for all that resides in your sister now, and even if it has been in her system for a couple of weeks, it is stronger than your father's version, he said showing him. Then let's use a quirk creation point to make one for all my own, from my sister, he said. Right away sir, he said making the modifications. Within seconds a nice aura of energy formed and Chase was done. It is yours to claim sir, he said as he stared at Izuku. Izuku reached his hand out as he touched the energy. As Izuku touched the swirling aura of energy, a surge of warmth coursed through his body, sending shivers up his spine. The light wrapped around his hand and flowed into him like a rushing stream, filling him with a newfound sense of power and purpose. He closed his eyes, feeling the energy merge with his very being. It feels powerful, he said as he looked at his body. Chase then looked at him as he looked at the screen. Even if you have been training your body for these past couple of years, your sister's version added quite a bit of power in a short time. It says you should be able to control around 50% by these estimates. If you used your father's version it would be around 55% or 60%, he said showing him. Izuku stared at the screen, his mind racing at the implications of Chase's analysis. 50%, huh? He murmured, flexing his hands as he felt the residual energy from the synchronization still humming through his body. That's a lot more than I expected, but it feels manageable. Chase adjusted his posture, tapping a few keys on the console to bring up a holographic projection of Izuku's body. The glowing diagram showed his energy pathways, now reinforced and intertwined with the essence of One for All. As to allowing you to use the power willingly is up to you, he said. Izuku held a hand to his chin. So, what you're saying is, instead of using 100% out the gate I need to continually hold 50% all throughout my body at once. Chase nodded at Izuku's question. His expression thoughtful yet analytical. Precisely, sir. Holding 50% consistently throughout your body will build the necessary foundation for you to safely progress to higher thresholds. It's not just about raw power, but also control and endurance. Think of it like a reservoir you're managing the flow to ensure nothing overflows or collapses under pressure. Izuku stared at the glowing diagram on the screen, his mind already working through the logistics of such a task. It's like training my muscles, but for my quirk. If I can master holding 50%, then 60%, 70%, and eventually 100% should come naturally, right? Correct, Chase confirmed. Your body is already accustomed to rigorous training, and your quirks complement each other in ways that should expedite the process. However, you must take care not to overexert yourself. The synchronization is stable, but pushing too hard too quickly could destabilize it. Just remember it will take time. Izuku nodded, absorbing Chase's advice with the seriousness it warranted. He felt the weight of the responsibility, but also the burning resolve that had always driven him. Time, huh? I'm used to taking things slowly and steadily. I won't rush this. Thank you again, Chase. I am going to go practice. Sounds good, sir, just be careful. Don't destroy your room, he said. I won't. Have a good night, he said, leaving the mind space and laying out on the bed once more. He could get to sleep later, but he would try this really quick. He stood up from his bed and inhaled slowly. He closed his eyes, summoning the power within. As the energy began to stir inside him, he felt it ripple like a current, ready to surge. But this time, he wasn't allowing it to burst forth recklessly. He had to control it, hold it steady, keep it in check. He could tell what One for All was, as it felt more alive. Green electricity similar to jolt flowed around him, showing his power was activating. When Izuku opened his eyes, he looked in the mirror and the energy swirled around him, but he was determined not to let it burst out of control. He did feel powerful, that was for sure. Izuku kept training this, allowing him to feel 50% of his new power. He had his first day of class tomorrow, and he would be ready. The 5 friends of Class 1A were walking alongside each other as they went to class. Jiro looked at Izuku, who yawned for what seemed like the 10th time already, and she looked somewhat annoyed at him not going to bed. "Dude, you look tired, did you even sleep?" asked Jiro, as a group of them walked to their class. Izuku nodded. Trying to hold 50% was a bit taxing, but it wasn't too bad. He had more or less gotten the mechanics down of activating what he called full cowling. But he didn't want to try to activate One for All alongside other quirks. He remembered that they made them more powerful, so he didn't know what would happen over time. "Yeah, I did. I got plenty of it, just nervous about our first day of class," he said, rubbing his eyes. Jiro raised an eyebrow, but didn't press the issue further. She had known Izuku for a while now and could tell when he was hiding something, but she also knew when to back off. His dedication to his quirks and training was admirable, even if it sometimes took a toll on him. "You know, you should take it easy on yourself, Izuku," Momo said, her voice softening a bit. "You're doing great already, and we haven't even started class." "Yeah, I know. I just want to do well," he said, looking ahead. Tokoyami raised a brow as he looked at him. "You know, Yagi," Tokoyami's voice cut through the chatter as his eyes met Izuku's, "you can't push yourself too much in the long run. You'll just end up burning out." Izuku looked at him and nodded. "Yeah, I know that, but still, thanks for enlightening me on the subject," he said, smiling at the terrible pun he made to get to Tokoyami. Jiro snickered while Shoji shook his head. Tokoyami gave a small, almost imperceptible sigh, his dark eyes narrowing slightly. "Why must you continue the light puns, Yagi?" he said with slight amusement. Izuku's grin widened as he scratched the back of his head. "Guess I can't help myself. You make it too easy, Tokoyami. If I need to learn to chill, you need to laugh." He felt the tension in his chest lighten just a bit, the playful banter reminding him that despite the stress, his friends were there to keep him grounded. Tokoyami started to walk ahead a bit faster as they reached the door. Sure, whatever, let's just start out the first day of class," he said, opening the door to hear yelling. "Get your feet off the desk. You are dishonoring the people who have sat there in the past," Iida yelled at Bakugo. "What's wrong with you? What school made you put a stick up your ass?" said Bakugo, smirking as the group walked in to find their spots. Izuku made eye contact with Bakugo and his expression changed. Izuku looked at the chair number and deadpanned. "Just great. Now I have class with him. Am I seriously sitting behind him? This is going to be amazing," he thought to himself as he sat down behind Bakugo. Iida looked over to Izuku and smiled. "Hello there," he said, marching over. Izuku was shocked at his very robotic movements, but he continued. "My name is Tenyu Iida, and I wanted to congratulate you on seeing the true meaning of the test and defeating the robot to save that girl," he said. Izuku put his hand up, "Izuku Yagi, but it was nothing. I was just doing what anyone else would." Iida's eyes widened for a moment at the humble response, but he quickly straightened up, giving Izuku a more formal bow. No. You have an incredible sense of justice and determination. What you did in that test was no small feat, Yagi. The way you rushed to rescue that girl, despite the risks, was heroic." "Yeah, Yagi," said Uraraka, jumping out from behind him. "It was awesome the way you jumped in and destroyed that thing from protecting me," she said, getting in his face. Izuku tried to get the two to back away from him, but it was futile. Bakugo continued to have that look on him as Izuku heard someone come into the door. Izuku saw Eraserhead walk into the room with a yellow sleeping bag. It made sense that he was an underground hero or someone who works late into the night to fight crime. Ochako and Iida looked to see where Izuku was staring and quickly hurried to their seats after seeing their teacher. "Not bad. It took you all 3.46 seconds to be quiet, but that's not going to be good enough," Mr. Izawa said as he looked like his class. Alright, just so we are clear, my name is Mr. Izawa, and welcome to your first day of the hero course. I will be your homeroom teacher. Don't worry, I know all of you already, he said, making them slightly shiver. Now, Izawa continued, dragging himself out of his sleeping bag with all the enthusiasm of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. Before we begin anything remotely fun or interesting, let me remind you all. You're here because you've shown potential, but potential isn't enough to make you heroes. If you think coasting through this course is an option, you're in for a rude awakening. Now put these on. We will be doing a quirk assessment test outside, he said, leaving the room. The quirk assessment test. Jiro muttered, her brows furrowing as she held the uniform. On the first day. Isn't that a bit extreme? Of course not, Iida said, his voice firm and confident. This is UA High School, the most prestigious hero academy. A test like this is to be expected. It's only fitting that we prove our worth from the start. Uraraka tugged on her tracksuit, a nervous laugh escaping her. I thought we'd at least get some time to settle in first. But I guess we should have known. Heroes don't exactly get a lot of prep time in real emergencies. The student ran to the locker rooms to quickly get changed. Beside Izuku, Iida adjusted his sleeves with precision, his movements brisk and efficient. This is the perfect way to start the term. It allows us to establish a baseline for our abilities and demonstrate our commitment to becoming heroes. Shoji, standing a few lockers down, nodded thoughtfully. True, but it's also a lot of pressure right off the bat. Not everyone handles that well. That's probably why we are doing it then, said Kaminari, zipping up the suit. Seeing where some shine and others don't. Fair point, said Kirishima. Soon everyone was outside as they stared at Izawa, who was waiting there expectingly. Good, now that everyone is here, I have a few words to say to you all, he said, looking at Izuku, who almost flinched under his gaze. Izuku Yagi. Come up here for a second, he said as he motioned him with his finger. Yes sir? Izuku asked, standing before Izawa, who gave him a long, unreadable look. Patch, he said quickly, throwing the ball with Izuku catching it. There will be many tests to the quirk assessment test. I am sure that, as we do this test, you all will notice it is a test that you did in middle school. You'll be tested on various physical activities. A 50-meter dash, grip strength, long jump, sustained running, and finally, a softball throw. You're allowed to use your quirks to enhance your performance in any way you see fit. I want to see how well you can apply your abilities in a variety of scenarios. Something that you all need to understand is at UA, we have quirks, and you use the quirks. That is one of the things that sucks about the rules today that need to be trained, he said, looking at Izuku. You placed first in the entrance exam, with it breaking records, he said, looking him up and down. How far could you throw a softball without your quirk in middle school? He asked him curiously. I'd say around 53 meters was what it was the last time I threw one, he said, examining it in his hand. Izawa nodded, his expression unreadable. 53 meters. Decent for a quirkless throw, he said, stepping back and motioning to the circle marked on the ground. Now, I want to see what you can do with your quirk. Step into the circle and throw it as far as you can. No holding back. You'll be the first example. Izuku looked at Izawa as he held a screen. Izuku breathed in and out as he looked at the ball. This is where I need to utilize multiple quirks at once. I know Black Whip and Jolt will be useless here. The three that are best suited to use are One for All, Fajin, and Zephyr Rush. I can rotate my arm in a circle to build up kinetic energy to throw. I know I can't handle 100% of One for All, so that will compensate for it. Then I can use Wind to give the ball momentum. Good, I have a plan, time to execute, he thought to himself as he stepped in the circle. Mr. Izawa watched him curiously. What have you got, kid, he thought to himself. Izuku looked back at his classmates as they all looked at him expectantly, except for Bakugo, who was glaring. That loser, he said. He didn't even have a quirk, he said, catching the attention of Iida. He has a quirk, he said, as they started to argue. Izuku ignored that as he started to focus. He activated full cowling to 50%, making sure not to overdo it. He started to rotate his arm in a circular motion to build up kinetic energy. The faint crackle of green lightning flickered around Izuku as full cowling activated, signaling the raw energy coursing through his body. His classmates grew quiet, watching with a mix of curiosity and anticipation. Even Bakugo's muttered complaints trailed off as all eyes turned toward Izuku. Rotating his arm? Kaminari whispered. What's he doing? Something clearly, said Shoto as he looked at him confused. That isn't going to help him the way he thinks it is, said Toru as she put a finger to her chin, even though no one would see. Izuku could feel the pressure mounting as everyone's gaze bore into him, but he turned it out, focusing entirely on executing his plan. He activated Zephyr Rush and the wind started to blow in the direction he wanted it to. With one final deep breath, Izuku planted his feet firmly and snapped his arm forward, releasing the ball with all his power of Fajin, One for All, and Zephyr Rush. The force of Izuku's throw was unlike anything the students or even Izawa had anticipated. The moment the ball left his hand, the air around him seemed to implode before exploding outward in a massive shockwave. A deafening boom echoed across the training field, causing the ground to rumble beneath their feet. The sheer power sent a ripple of wind blasting outward, strong enough to knock everyone off balance. Students were blown back, shielding their faces, as dust and debris swirled around them. Izawa, who had been standing closest to the circle, stumbled backward, momentarily caught off guard by the unexpected impact. "What the hell was that?" Bakugo shouted. His voice barely audible over the roar of the wind as he planted his feet to keep from falling. Kirishima, who had instinctively activated his hardening quirk, grinned despite the chaos. "That was insane. He's got some serious power. Did he just break the sound barrier?" Mina exclaimed, her voice trembling with awe as she scanned the wreckage left in the wake of Izuku's throw. "It sure felt like it," Kaminari said, his mouth agape as he struggled to stand. "What kind of throw was that? That wasn't just raw strength, that was next level." Izuku, still holding his breath, couldn't quite believe what he had just done. His arm throbbed with residual energy and he could feel the hum of his quirks lingering, like an aftershock. His heart raced in his chest as his classmates slowly regained their composure. Bakugo's eyes twitched in anger. How the hell is this nerd so fucking strong? Did he think he was too good enough to not? Izuku looked over to Izawa, who showed him his result. "You got 2,544.6 meters, Izawa said nonchalantly, holding up the measuring device. His tone was calm, but the slight rise of his eyebrows betrayed his surprise. He'd seen impressive performances before, but this was on another level. The class erupted into chaos. "How the hell are we going to top that?" yelled Mina, throwing her arms up in mock despair, though her wide grin showed she wasn't really upset. "Spooky," murmured Ryuko, her normally reserved tone tinged with genuine awe. Her pale eyes locked onto Izuku, as if he were a ghost who had just come to life. That wasn't human. The class quieted as Izawa addressed them, his dry tone laced with a subtle undertone of challenge. "Yagi's performance is an example of what happens when you use your quirks effectively. This isn't about raw strength or flashy moves, it's about understanding your limits and pushing past them in a controlled way." He paused, letting his words sink in as his gaze swept across the group. "Normally, I'd dangle the threat of suspension to make you all take this seriously, but apparently, that's frowned upon now." His voice dripped with sarcasm, earning a few chuckles from the students. "Instead, I'm going to say this. You're not just competing against each other. You're competing against yourselves. Go all out, no holding back. Show me what you've got. But if you think the hero course is a joke, then you will be expelled." While they were silenced by their teacher's words, the students looked at each other with determination in their eyes. Everyone knew they were going to have fun, but also showed everyone what they had. Izuku's POV. "As the tests went on, I more or less crushed them. I don't mean to brag, but that is what I literally did. When I did the grip test, it broke from my grip when using one for all. The 50-meter dash was easy as well. I got 0.6 seconds, being the fastest one of the day. Iida was second with 3.04 seconds. I did start to notice something. As the tests went on, I started to feel off. I had shortness of breath and got tired way easier than I ever did before. I chalked it up to nerves at first, but it wasn't just that. My body felt heavy and my vision blurred slightly at the edges. Everyone was on the softball throw now, the final test, and I was glad about it. Something was going on with my body and I needed to know. I still placed first in every test except the ball throw. Ochako got infinity, which was nothing remarkable. That Ryuko girl seemed interesting though. She called her quirk poltergeist and she was a telekinetic like my sister. Not as strong, but still pretty strong. Thankfully, Mr. Izawa stood in front of all of us and started to speak once more. "Okay students, listen up. This is just day one of your future. Here are all your results," he said, hitting his notepad and showing them a projection. "I got first, followed by Momo, then Todoroki, and it just continued down the list." I looked towards Izawa and I started to sweat cold now. It could have been someone who had a cold brought it to the doors, and I am getting a fever now, but this sucks. I haven't gotten sick since I was a kid. Now students, this is going to be no easy walk in the park type deal. You are all trying to be heroes. If you are in the top 5 on this list, continue to be in the top 5 and everyone else gets inspiration from them. If you are at the bottom 5 of the list, be better. You have potential, but potential means nothing if you don't put in the work. I know all of you have the possibility to be great, but show that you can and will be great, he said with conviction in his voice. That's all for class today, you are dismissed and may return to the dorms. Izuku, as always said, his tone neutral, but sharp. Stay for a moment. I nodded, trying to push down the nervousness that was bubbling up inside me. As the last of the students left, I slowly approached Izawa, trying to steady my breathing. "A job today, but I need to ask. "Are you feeling okay?" he asked bluntly. I froze for a moment, caught off guard by his question. Aizawa's gaze was steady, but I could tell there was something more beneath his neutral expression he had noticed. There was no way he could have missed it. Despite my best efforts to push through, my body had been betraying me all day. The dizziness, the shortness of breath, the overwhelming fatigue, it wasn't normal. "I'm fine," I said quickly, trying to brush it off. "Just a little tired, that's all." The tests were intense. Aizawa raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "I'm sure. I noticed how you were barely keeping it together during the tests. You're not the only one in this class with high expectations," he said, feeling the top of his forehead. "Kid, you're burning up. Let's take you to Recovery Girl," he said, tapping on his shoulder to move him along. I opened my mouth to protest, but the words caught in my throat as Aizawa's hand rested firmly on my shoulder, guiding me toward the door. He didn't seem like someone who would take no for an answer, and honestly, I wasn't in the right state to argue. My legs felt shaky, and the cold sweat on my brow only made me feel worse. As we walked through the halls, my thoughts raced. Getting sick wasn't an option right now, and I knew that I would fall behind if I did. I still wasn't 100% sure what was causing this, but at least I was at the Recovery Girl's office. As we reached Recovery Girl's office, Aizawa knocked sharply on the door before opening it. The Recovery Girl was sitting at her desk, flipping through some papers, but as soon as she saw us, her expression shifted from casual to concerned. "Not again, Aizawa," she said with a sigh, but she didn't waste any time. "What's going on this time?" Aizawa stepped aside, gently guiding me into the office. "Izuku's not feeling well. He has a fever from what I can tell, but I need a prognosis." The Recovery Girl didn't hesitate. Her eyes immediately softened with concern as she motioned for me to sit down. "Come on, sit down, Izuku," she instructed, her voice calm but authoritative. I nodded weakly, moving to the chair she had pointed to. I sat down, and she put a thermometer on my head. "Are you feeling anything else?" she asked, and I nodded. "I feel a little dizzy, and my eyes blur every once in a while." I saw her look at the thermometer. "He's running a fever 102.4 degrees, she said, her tone calm but firm. "When did you start feeling this?" "Middle of the Quirk application test." "I know I am not overdoing it, I've practiced what I've been doing for a while now," I said, hoping I wasn't getting too sick. The Recovery Girl gave me a sharp look as she set the thermometer down. "In the middle of the test, huh? And you just pushed through it instead of telling anyone? Typical stubbornness must run in the family," she muttered, shaking her head. Her tone wasn't harsh, but I could feel the disapproval laced within it. "I didn't think it was serious," I admitted quietly, avoiding her gaze. "I thought it was just nerves or something. And don't compare me to Dad," I said, trying to sound angry, but it hurt too much right now with my body aching slightly. The Recovery Girl gave a knowing hum, leaning back slightly as she folded her arms. "You might not want to be compared to him, but the stubborn streak is undeniable," she said, her tone softer now. "And whether you like it or not, pushing yourself like this isn't doing you any favors. You're lucky it's just a fever and not something worse." I sighed, feeling the weight of her words settle in my chest. "I didn't want to let anyone down," I murmured. "The tests today everyone was watching, and I felt like I had to prove I deserved to be here." Aizawa, who had been leaning silently against the doorframe, finally spoke up. "Yagi," he began, his voice low but firm. "No one here doubts that you deserve to be here. You've proven that already. But pushing yourself to the point where you can't function doesn't help anyone. Least of all to you." I nodded. "I know, I am sorry," I said, as the Recovery Girl walked over to a cabinet with loads of pills. Recovery Girl rummaged through the cabinet, her movements deliberate as she selected a small vial and a packet of pills. She turned back to me with a pointed look, her tone firm but not unkind. "Sorry isn't enough, Izuku. You need to learn from this. You can't help anyone if you run yourself into the ground." She handed me a small paper cup with a couple of pills and a glass of water. "Take these. They'll help bring your fever down and ease some of your symptoms. But what you really need is rest." I took the pills without hesitation, the bitterness lingering on my tongue as I swallowed them down with the water. "Thank you," I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. "You should be fine by tomorrow, but please be careful," she said with concern. "I don't want you to come back here every chance you get," she said, giving me a knowing look. "Yes ma'am," I said, as I took 2 pills. "According to these readings, you should be able to get rid of the fever by dinner time, so just try to get some rest. Aizawa can walk you to the dorm," she said, as she placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "And remember, Izuku," Recovery Girl added, her voice softening. "Taking care of yourself isn't a weakness. Even the strongest heroes need to rest." Aizawa nodded toward the door. "Come on, let's get you back before you collapse in the hallway. I'll make sure no one disturbs you." I stood slowly, the medicine already starting to ease some of the heat pulsing through my body. My legs were still shaky, but I felt a little more stable now. Thank you, recovery girl, I said, bowing my head slightly. Third person Pav. As sensei and students walked the halls, Izuku coughed a couple of times as he looked at Izawa. You know, Yagi, he said, placing a hand on the back of his head. There was a reason I selected you to be in my class. Izuku looked up at him, surprise flickering across his fevered features. You chose me specifically, sensei? He asked, his voice rasping slightly from the cough. Izawa nodded, his hands stuffed into his pockets as they walked. I don't play favorites, and I expect every student in my class to pull their weight, but you caught my attention from the beginning. Your work ethic, your determination, and your quirk, it all stood out. You remind me of someone who constantly pushes themselves to the edge, sometimes too far. Izuku blinked, processing the rare bit of praise. You mean Dad? Izawa's lips twitched into the faintest smirk. All Might, yes. Now yes, I understand you don't want to be compared to him because of your situation, but I noticed that in the short time that I've seen you, you still seem to model yourself after him. Yeah, I try to separate All Might and the shitty father he is, he said bluntly, making Izawa glance at him, but didn't say anything. There wasn't much said after a while, as they finally made it to the dorms. Izuku wiped some sweat from his brow as he looked at his teacher. Don't come out of your dorm unless it is necessary. No ifs, ands, or buts about. Understand me, kid, he said sternly. Izuku nodded, his body still feeling heavy from the fever and exhaustion. Yes, sensei. I understand, he said, his voice quiet but resolute. He shifted his weight slightly, leaning against the doorframe of his dorm room for support. Izawa studied him for a moment, his sharp gaze softening slightly. Good. Rest is your priority right now. Don't do anything. I won't, Izuku promised, bowing his head slightly. Izawa nodded, his usual stoic demeanor returning. If you need anything, tell someone. Don't try to tough it out alone. Be ready for training tomorrow. We got something special, he said, smirking slightly. Yes, sir, Izuku replied, his tone more genuine this time. With that, Izawa turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing softly down the hall. Izuku watched him go. It wasn't often that Izawa opened up from what he could tell about him, and it made Izuku feel strangely reassured. As he walked inside his dorm, he could get out of his gym outfit and hung it up while putting on a black hoodie with gray sweats. He was still sweating a bit, but a fever meant you needed to bundle up even if you were hot. As he pulled the blanket over himself, Izuku groaned softly as he reached over to grab his phone, his body protesting even the small movement. His screen lit up and he squinted at the message, his vision still slightly blurry from the lingering effects of the fever. It was from Jiro and Momo. Momo? Are you coming to lunch? We are in the middle of the room. Kyoka. Please come to lunch. I need someone to talk to, and this Kaminari guy isn't someone I want to talk to. Izuku's fingers hovered over the screen for a moment as he read the messages from Momo and Jiro. He felt a pang of guilt. They had been looking for him and he was stuck in his dorm, unable to join them. He wanted to respond, to tell them that he would love to join, but he knew that was impossible. Not today. He quickly typed a reply to both of them, his fingers slow and deliberate as his mind struggled to stay focused. Izuku. Sorry, I can't make it to lunch today. I'm feeling a bit under the weather. But I'm sure you'll be fine without me. Please, enjoy it for me. He hit send and set the phone down, the faintest feeling of disappointment hanging over him. He had wanted to be there with his friends, to feel normal, to forget about the exhaustion and the fever for just a moment. But instead, he was left in his dorm room, alone with his thoughts. He then felt something weird. It was a pulling feeling, and it wasn't him. Izuku dropped his phone on his bedside table as he was being pulled into his mind space. Izuku stood there looking around and seeing Chase frantically pace back and forth. Izuku walked over to him as Chase was pacing, his expression tense and his steps quick. Izuku could see the frustration and concern etched deeply into his face. Chase. Izuku called, his voice echoing slightly in the empty space. It was always a bit disorienting when he found himself in his mind space, but something about Chase's agitated movements made Izuku pause. Sir, you need to see this, he said. He adjusted his notepad and transferred it to the control console in the middle of the room. It was a screen of his quirk names and balls of energy representing each quirk. It looked like One for All was unfolding like a swirling cloud of energy, its power emanating from the central node on the screen. There was a branch of energy and it was affecting 3 quirks right now. Danger Sense, Black Whip, and Fajin. Wait, what is it doing to the other quirks? He said, looking a little worried. That is the thing, sir. It is evolving them, awakening them, he said simply. He said, adjusting the screen to show them. One for All is seeing the quirks in your body and it is using its power to make them stronger from what I can tell. The reason you have a fever wasn't from overexerting yourself. It was from One for All evolving your quirks, and that is the thing. I don't know if it will evolve all of your quirks or just some of them, he said, as the screen shifted to his other quirks. From what I can tell, it is only affecting the quirks that you made your own. That from One for All. One for All is seeing this and is making them stronger than before. This is what is bad. I don't know what it will do to your quirks or how far it will enhance them, but what I do know is that recovery girl. Your fever will be done when this is done evolving by the time the process is complete, but it could take some time. It's an intense shift, Izuku. The fever is a side effect of your quirks evolving, and it's not just because of physical exertion, Chase explained, his voice serious, as he watched the screen carefully. Izuku's eyes widened in disbelief. Wait, so One for All is actually making my quirk stronger? He looked at the glowing orbs on the screen, now pulsing with energy, each quirk connected to One for All in a way he had never seen before. Yes, you won't die or anything like that. It's just unpredictable, and you and I won't know what the power for the quirks will be until you use them. If this was Brain Boost, Cell Surge, or Eagle Eyes, it would have been fine, and you wouldn't have felt anything, but because it was quirks from One for All's users that were already made stronger from One for All previously, then I don't know where it will go, he said, putting a finger to his chin. Izuku sighed in relief, knowing he would be fine, but this was still hurting him with the fever and all. Just be sure to limit the use of One for All right now, as I don't know the side effects of what else will happen. That's what I wanted to tell you, Master Izuku. You can rest in the real world now, he said. Sounds good, Chase, thank you, he said, as he faded in and out until he was back in his bed looking at the ceiling. This is going to be interesting, he said, as he turned over trying to get some sleep. Couple hours later, 1 p.m. Jiro's fingers continued their rhythmic tapping on the couch, a nervous energy building within her. Her thoughts kept drifting back to Izuku. He'd been distant lately, ever since his fever started, and it was hard to shake the feeling that there was something more going on beneath the surface. She tried to focus on the games the others were playing, but every time someone spoke, her mind wandered back to him. Momo, sitting on the other side of her, kept her attention fixed on the game in front of her, but Jiro could tell she wasn't fully engaged. Her eyes would occasionally drift to her phone, and she would give a quiet sigh before returning her focus to the cards in her hands. It wasn't like Momo acted so distracted, and Jiro couldn't help but notice how much her worry mirrored her own. Ochako, sitting beside Mina, tried to keep the mood light with her usual bubbly energy. Come on, Momo, focus. You're going to let me win if you keep daydreaming. She teased, a bright smile on her face, but it was clear even to her that Momo wasn't fully present. Mina, ever the optimist, chimed in with a playful wink. Yeah, Momo, we've got to beat Ochako. She's been winning all day. It's time to let us take the crown. She threw a few cards onto the table with exaggerated flair, but the playful atmosphere didn't quite reach the others. The card game was meant to be a distraction, but the undercurrent of concern was too strong. Jiro glanced at Momo once more. Momo, do you think he's okay? She asked softly, her voice barely audible over the noise of the game. Momo hesitated, her gaze flickering briefly to her phone before she answered. I don't know. He said he was fine, just a fever, but it's strange. Yagi has a fever? Asked Asui, putting a finger to her chin. Momo nodded, her eyes reflecting a quiet concern. Yeah, he texted us earlier. Well, fevers are never good, said Toru in frustration at Ochako for placing the last card down on the table, an overdramatic flourish that drew everyone's attention for a moment. Yes, indeed they are quite spooky in a bad way, said Ryuko, as she tucked some hair behind her ear. Jiro sat up straighter on the couch, her fingers no longer tapping, but tightly gripping the fabric of her jacket. I know he's trying to brush it off, but it feels like there's more going on. She looked up to see Tokoyami carrying a bowl of something in his hands as he was heading towards the stairs. Tokoyami, are you heading up to check on Izuku? Jiro asked, her voice soft but carrying a sense of urgency. Tokoyami paused mid-step, glancing over at Jiro. Ah, yes, he replied, his deep voice calm yet tinged with unusual concern. With him missing lunch and not feeling well. I thought he was in need of nourishment. And if his fever is contagious, then I'll just use Dark Shadow to drop off the food. Jiro nodded, relieved to hear that Tokoyami was taking the initiative to check on Izuku. Good idea. Momo giggled softly, but loud enough to be heard. All you do care about him. I thought you didn't like his puns about the light and dark he always tries to tell you to get you to smile. Tokoyami gave a rare, soft grunt at Momo's teasing, his expression remaining unreadable, though his eyes glinted with a mix of exasperation and something softer that only appeared in the company of his closest friends. I don't know what you are talking about, he said quietly. Momo chuckled, her eyes twinkling with amusement as she watched Tokoyami's reaction. Oh, come on, Tokoyami, you can't deny it. You know he's always trying to get you to crack a smile with those light and dark jokes. You might not show it, but I can tell you appreciate his company. Okay, I am going to bring this to him, he said, turning around quickly going up the stairs. Momo watched Tokoyami's retreating figure with a playful smile on her face, but there was also an undeniable warmth behind her teasing. She knew how much Tokoyami cared for Izuku, even if he didn't always show it. The way he had acted just then, gruff but still willing to check on their friend, was proof enough. Still, Momo couldn't resist a bit of fun at his expense. Boom. "I won again," said Ochako, doing some weird dance moves as she placed down her cards. Ochako's victory dance was met with a mix of groans and playful protests from the others. Mina rolled her eyes, though she couldn't help but smile at her friend's enthusiasm. Alright, Ochako. You're insufferable when you win," Mina teased, leaning back in her chair. Asui crossed her arms with a smirk. "I don't think you need any more victories today, Ochako. You've been winning non-stop." "Agreed," said Ryuko, shuffling the deck with her telekinesis. Izuku's room. Tokoyami knocked on the door and there was no response, meaning he was likely asleep. Tokoyami hesitated for a moment before gently pushing the door open. The room was dim, with only the soft light of the late afternoon filtering through the curtains. Izuku was lying in bed, his face flushed from the fever, his body still and quiet. Tokoyami activated Dark Shadow, and he now held the bowl of soup as it made its way over to him. He called out to him. "Yagi," said Tokoyami as he stood by the door. Izuku stirred slightly at the sound of Tokoyami's voice, his eyes fluttering open. He looked disoriented for a moment, blinking against the dim light. "Tokoyami." His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper, as if even speaking required more effort than he had to give. He shifted slightly in bed, propping himself up against the pillows, though his body protested the movement. His forehead was still glistening with sweat, the fever lingering stubbornly. Dark Shadow set the bowl on the table next to him as it stood over Izuku. "I brought you something to eat," Tokoyami said, his tone soft but insistent. "You haven't had lunch, and I thought you could use something to help your body recover." "Thank you, Tokoyami," he said as he sat up, grabbing the bowl. He looked at Dark Shadow, who was still by the bed, and he nodded at him. "Thanks, Dark Shadow." He gave a thumbs up as he ate his soup. He didn't feel hungry, but knowing Tokoyami, he would wait till he's done. As he ate, Tokoyami remained at the side of the room, quiet and patient. Izuku felt the weight of his friend's presence, a reassuring anchor in the midst of his confusion and fear. He could feel the tension in his body start to loosen just a little as the minutes passed, though the worry still lingered like a shadow in the back of his mind. "I'm sorry, Tokoyami," Izuku said softly, his voice barely a whisper as he took another spoonful. "I shouldn't have worried you. I didn't want anyone to see me like this." "It's fine, you couldn't have predicted a fever today. When will you be let out?" he asked curiously. "In a few hours. Despite how I look, I feel way better than I did this morning," he said as he continued to eat. Tokoyami nodded slowly, his expression softening as he observed Izuku eating, even if he seemed to be pushing through it more out of obligation than true hunger. He had always admired Izuku's tenacity, but it was clear that sometimes it could be his greatest weakness. Tokoyami was starting to understand that Izuku didn't always allow himself to be vulnerable, to let his friends fully take part in the struggles he faced. "I'm glad you're feeling better," Tokoyami replied, his tone steady. "But remember, it's okay to ask for help when you need it. You don't have to carry everything alone. For someone who is always on about darkness and shadows, you sure know how to shine some light on people," he said, smiling, hoping Tokoyami would react. Tokoyami paused, the unexpected pun hanging in the air for a moment. His expression remained stoic, but there was a flicker in his eyes, a small, almost imperceptible glint of amusement. Right. Are you done eating the soup?" he said, trying to avoid the pun. "Yeah, I am, thank you for the soup, Tokoyami," he said, handing it to Dark Shadow. Tokoyami took the bowl from Dark Shadow, his expression neutral, but with a small, approving nod. "You're welcome, Yagi. It's good to see you eating, even if it's just a little. I'm sure it'll help you feel better sooner. See you in a few hours," he said as he walked out and shut the door. Izuku smiled at how Tokoyami was. He would get him to crack someday. As Tokoyami walked down the stairs, he couldn't help but admire the fact that he tried to get him to laugh. Not having many friends made him what he was, but Izuku was always trying to get him to smile or show a reaction that was anything but stoic. Tokoyami often found himself perplexed by Izuku's unrelenting optimism, even in the face of his own struggles. The young hero had an uncanny ability to bring warmth into the darkest corners of his life, not just for himself, but for others as well. Tokoyami didn't have many friends growing up. His quiet nature, his dark persona, had kept him isolated from others. But Izuku, with his infectious enthusiasm and unwavering kindness, had made him feel like he was a part of something, like he belonged. He may not have shown it, but he was glad to have him as a friend. 4 hours later, 5 p.m. Izuku moved slowly, but purposefully, as he changed out of his sweat-soaked clothes, the lingering remnants of his fever finally beginning to subside. The medication recovery girl had given him had done its job, and though his body was still a little sluggish, he felt like a weight had been lifted. He could feel his strength coming back, but there was still an unsettling, nagging sensation in the back of his mind, the feeling that something was different, something had changed, and he wasn't sure how to handle it. His quirks had evolved. He had felt it earlier, the strange connection to the other quirks within him, the way they surged in response to One for All's power. He didn't fully understand it, but he knew he couldn't ignore it. His strength, his potential, it was all growing beyond his comprehension. And that scared him. But for now, he needed to eat. He was starving. He hadn't realized just how much the fever and the exhaustion had taken it out of him until now. His stomach growled in protest, reminding him of just how long it had been since his last proper meal. He needed to fuel up, even if his mind kept circling back to the evolution of his quirks. He left his room and made his way downstairs, his body still a little sore from the lingering effects of the fever, but it wasn't enough to stop him from moving. His legs were shaky, but he pushed through, determined to get something to eat. As he reached the common room, he was met by the familiar sounds of his classmates, the low murmur of their conversation, and the clinking of plates and cutlery. They hadn't noticed him yet. Momo looked up first, her eyes lit up when she saw him standing at the doorway. "Izuku," she said, a smile spreading across her face. "You're up. How are you feeling?" Izuku gave her a small smile in return, still feeling a little self-conscious about his appearance. "A lot better. Thanks to everyone for helping out and for putting up with me being out of it." Ochako, who had been sitting next to Mina, immediately stood as well, her usual energetic demeanor returning. "You're finally up, Yagi. How are you feeling? We were worried there for a bit." "I am feeling much better now, but I am starving, quite literally," he said, as his stomach grumbled to prove his point. Momo's smile widened as she gestured for him to take a seat at the table. "You've definitely earned it. Come on, eat up. We've got plenty to share." Izuku, feeling the hunger pangs intensifying in his stomach, made his way to the table, sitting down carefully to avoid putting too much strain on his still recovering body. As he looked around, he saw his friends busy with their own meals, their expressions a mix of concern and relief at seeing him up and moving again. As Izuku devoured another spoonful of curry, he couldn't help but feel a sense of normalcy return. The rich comforting flavors filled him, and for the first time in what felt like days, his body felt like it was truly coming back to life. Each bite gave him more energy, more strength, and for a brief moment, the unsettling feeling of his evolving quirk faded into the background. Mina leaned over from her seat across the table, her eyes wide, as she watched Izuku consume plate after plate. "Wow, Yagi, you really were starving, huh?" she said, a playful grin spreading across her face. "You're going to eat us out of house and home at this rate." Izuku chuckled nervously, his cheeks flushing slightly at the attention. I guess I didn't realize how hungry I was." He shoved another spoonful of curry into his mouth, the warmth and flavor making him feel grounded once more. The discomfort from his fever and the unease about his evolving quirk seemed to melt away as he focused on eating and the comforting presence of his friends around him. As Izuku continued to eat, he talked to the majority of his class and got to know everyone's name. He continued to wander around. As he went to the kitchen to get yet another bowl of curry, he felt a hand on his arm that was placed gently on him. He jumped slightly as he looked to see Ryoko Yanagi. He thought she was pretty chill with everyone, but he hadn't had many interactions with her personally. Ryoko smiled softly, her presence calm and reassuring as she looked at him. "You, okay?" she asked, her voice as quiet and measured as always. "You seem lost in thought." Izuku blinked, momentarily surprised by her approach. He hadn't expected anyone to check in on him while he was so focused on food. He appreciated it, though. It made him feel like a part of the group, not just the one who always had to push through everything alone. Yeah, I'm good," he said, his voice slightly hoarse. "Be sure to rest for tomorrow. It is our first day of hero training," she said with a slight smile. "I will, Yanagi," he said, as he ate another spoonful of curry. Ryoko gave a small, knowing smile, clearly satisfied with his response. She gave his arm a gentle pat before stepping back, her eyes soft with quiet concern. "I'm glad to hear that." She then turned around and walked away, leaving him in thought. She definitely was interesting. Izuku spent another couple of hours eating, and he had come to the conclusion that when his quirks evolved, he needed lots of energy, meaning food. Speaking of which, he should go and test them right now. He put on his shoes and laced them up, but he saw someone standing right in front of him. He looked up to see Jiro with a somewhat annoyed look. "Hey Kyoka, what's up?" he said, oblivious to her growing annoyance. "Where are you going?" she said, wanting an answer. "I was going to go and probably train," he said, making her earphone jacks twitch. "No you aren't," she said sternly. Izuku blinked in surprise, caught off guard by her firm tone. "Huh? Why not?" he asked, his mind still focused on the urge to test out his evolving quirks. Hiro sighed, her arms crossing, as she looked at him with a mix of concern and irritation. Izuku, seriously, you've just gotten over a fever. You've been eating non-stop and now you want to head straight into training. You need to rest. Izuku scratched the back of his head sheepishly, suddenly feeling guilty for his eagerness to push forward. But I feel fine now, mostly. But then let's keep it that way and go to bed, she said, grabbing his hand and dragging him to his room. Come on, Izuku. You're not gonna get stronger if you burn yourself out before the first day of hero training, Jiro continued, her tone softening, but still firm, as she guided him back to his room. She had a determined look on her face, one that made it clear she wasn't going to let him get away with it. But Izuku started to protest, but Jiro shot him a look that made him pause. No buts, Izuku. Resting is just as important as training. You've got to recover properly so you're ready for tomorrow. Izuku's feet finally slowed as they reached his room. He was still mentally wrestling with his desire to train and his body's need for rest. Jiro let go of his hand and pushed open the door to his room. Ioka, he said quietly. What, nerd? She asked, still a bit annoyed. I'm sorry, he said looking at the ground. Jiro's eyes softened and she nodded. It's fine. Just please take care of yourself, she said, hugging him. Izuku stood frozen for a moment, surprised by the hug, but he didn't pull away. He could feel Jiro's warmth and genuine care in her actions. It wasn't something he was used to being on the receiving end of such kindness. It's not fine. I didn't mean for you to worry about me, he said, reciprocating the hug. It's alright, Jiro finally said, pulling away and looking him in the eye. Good night, Izuku, she said, patting him on the chest as she walked to her room. Izuku sighed as he walked into his room to call it a day. Next day, battle training. Izuku had been excited all day to see what the first day of hero training was going to be like. His classmates were the same way too, and to his surprise his father was right at the door. I am coming through the door like a hero, said All Might as he walked in, getting gasps from the classroom. God damn it. I knew it was going to happen at some point though, he thought to himself. As All Might strode into the classroom, his booming voice and commanding presence immediately captured everyone's attention. His iconic smile radiated energy and confidence, and the class buzzed with excitement and awe. For most of the students, this was the moment they had dreamed of, the chance to be taught by the #1 hero himself. Welcome, Class 1A. All Might began, his voice filling the room. Today marks the beginning of your journey to becoming true heroes. You'll face challenges, push your limits, and learn what it truly means to stand tall in the face of danger. Izuku sat at his desk, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. While he was thrilled to be trained by All Might, the secret of their connection weighed on him. The idea of standing out in front of his classmates made him uneasy, but he quickly reminded himself to focus on learning and improving. The day's lesson was a practical one. All Might continued, pulling out a remote and pressing a button. A large screen behind him is lit up with bold letters that read, Battle Training. The room erupted in whispers and murmurs of anticipation. We will simulate real hero scenarios, and you will face off against your classmates in a controlled environment. But don't worry, he added with a grin, I'll be watching closely to make sure things don't get out of hand. Now. How about we get in these costumes, he said, hitting a button as suitcases came out of the wall. Now go and get changed and meet me in training ground beta, he said as he dramatically left the room with the students excitedly getting their suitcases. Training ground beta. All Might waited patiently as he waited for Class 1A and 1B to walk out. They would be in for quite a surprise. He then heard footsteps, seeing Class 1A and 1B walking down the hall, giving each other confused looks. All Might looked at everyone's choice of attire. He looked at Ichiro and Inori costumes and nodded at their choices. Ichiro wanted to wear an outfit similar to his own, and he hoped that they wouldn't notice and figure out he was his son. Ichiro stood proud at 6 feet and 1 inch tall and reminded him of himself when he attended UA. He had green eyes and his blonde hair was in between his ears and his shoulders. His build. Ichiro's hero costume reflected his straightforward and confident personality. It bore a striking resemblance to All Might's iconic design, though it had distinct modifications to avoid giving away their connection. The color scheme was a deep navy blue with gold accents, symbolizing strength and resilience. A bold golden lightning bolt design ran diagonally across his chest, adding flair and emphasizing his dynamic presence. The fabric was reinforced for durability, with protective padding over the shoulders, chest, and knees. Unlike All Might's classic cape, Ichiro opted for a lightweight, sleeveless jacket that added to his mobility while maintaining a heroic look. His boots were sturdy yet sleek, designed to handle intense physical activity. A utility belt wrapped around his waist, equipped with essential tools for hero work, including grappling hooks and small smoke pellets for creating distractions. His gloves were high-tech, fitted with pressure-activated grips to enhance his strength-based quirk. He looked over to Inori, who would be him if he was a woman. Granted, not as tall obviously. She had long blonde hair and blue eyes and stood at 5 feet 10 inches tall. She had a lean but muscular build. Inori's hero costume was a perfect balance of practicality and elegance, reflecting her analytical and focused personality. Designed with mobility and versatility in mind, her outfit emphasized both her agility and her strength. The main color of the costume was a sleek black with silver accents running along the seams, giving it a modern and tactical appearance. The bodysuit fit snugly but allowed for full range of motion, made from a lightweight yet durable material that could withstand high-impact combat. Her long blonde hair was tied back in a high ponytail, keeping it out of her face during battle while adding a touch of flair. The costume had reinforced shoulder guards and elbow pads, subtly incorporated into the design to provide extra protection during close combat. She had some last-minute changes made to her costume because of her inheriting One for All, making her more physically stronger and not to mention mind's reach. She was going to be a powerhouse in the future. He looked over at Izuku and his smile faltered slightly, but no one would notice. He had gotten here on his own and without his help, and that bothered him. No matter. He would do his damnedest to help him from here on out. Izuku was proud of his suit. His bodysuit was a vibrant forest green with black and white accents running along the seams, creating a sleek and dynamic appearance. The material was a high-performance, flexible fabric reinforced with lightweight armor plating on his torso, forearms, and legs to offer protection without sacrificing mobility. He made and crafted a lot of the things on his suit. His gloves were the first. The gloves were gray with white accents along the knuckles, giving them a clean, practical look that complemented the rest of his costume. They weren't just for show. They were crafted with functionality and durability in mind. The Fajin, and now One for All flowing in his system, he needed something to reduce the impact on his arms. Yes, he had a cell surge to heal him faster, but it still hurt. His gloves were built to have a bit of absorption in blows. His boots were a bit more of the same, emphasizing the need for practicality without sacrificing his agility. He spent just as much time perfecting his footwear as he did his gloves. His boots were designed to handle the force of his high-speed movements. The boots were designed to provide him with maximum traction while still allowing him to make fast directional changes. They had reinforced ankle support to help with injury. He was proud of it and was ready to take on hero training. He was interrupted from his thoughts as All Might started to speak. "Alright, you bunch of newbies. I am sure you are wondering why both classes are here, right? Well, that is quite simple. This is going to be joint training courtesy of both of your homeroom teachers," he said happily. Izuku's eyes widened slightly, his mind racing with a flurry of thoughts. Joint training that could mean working alongside the students of Class 1B. This would be fun. "Alright, hold your questions to the end of the scenario I am about to present to you all," he said, pulling out some papers. Izuku looked around to see Class A and B were giving each other looks of tension. That wasn't good. Not to mention, but he saw that Inori was looking at him with curiosity and Ichiro looked pissed. "Here is the scenario." All Might's booming voice rang out, capturing the attention of both classes. He stood at the front of the group, his usual exuberance replaced with a more serious tone. "Here's the situation for your exercise. We've got two teams. The heroes and the villains. You're going to be split into teams of 4. 2 from Class 1A and 2 from Class 1B. The backstory for this mock battle is that a group of villains are hiding a weapon payload inside the building. But don't get too comfortable thinking this is just about the bomb. The weapon is fake, of course, but you don't know where it's hidden, and time is limited," he said, as all students were paying attention now. "For the heroes, you have 15 minutes to either capture the villains or secure the weapon before time runs out. The villains, on the other hand, will win if they either capture the heroes or keep that weapon safe for the full 15 minutes. Simple, right? Now, before we start, there are a few more things to consider," All Might said, his tone turning more serious. "The villains will be given 5 minutes to find the weapon and set up their defenses before the heroes move in. During that time, the heroes will be given a schematic of the building to study and plan their strategy. Use it wisely. Time is your enemy." Everyone nodded as they understood the assignment so far. "All participants will have a roll of special tape," All Might added. "The tape can be used to tie up your opponents. Once a student is tied up, they're considered captured and out of the game. This means you'll need to be careful with your movements and always watch your back. A successful capture could make all the difference in this training exercise. Are there any questions?" No one raised their hand and he nodded. "Good. Then let's get our teams picked," he said excitedly. Team A. Izuku Yagi, Ryuko Yanagi, Satsuna Tokage, and Shihei Kawaro. Team B. Tenya Iida, Katsuki Bakugo, Nito Monoma, and Juzo Hunanuki. Team C. Ochako Uraraka, Fumikage Tokoyami, Yui Kadai, and Tetsutetsu Tetsutetsu. Team D. Hanta Siro, Kyoka Jiro, Senator Kabara, and Hiryurin. Team E. Momo Yaoi Rozu, Mina Ishido, Ichiro Yagi, and Manga Fukudashi. Team F. Sayu Asui, Denki Kaminari, Itsuka Kendo, and Yusetsu Uwais. Team G. Minoru Mineta, Injiro Kirishima, Jiroda Shishida, and Inori Yagi. Team H. Rikido Sato, Yuga Aoyama, Honi Tsunatori, and Ibara Shiozaki. Team I. Mashiro Aojiro, Mizo Shoji, Koji Koda, and Kasate Tsuburaba. Team J. Shoto Todoroki, Toru Hagakure, Kinoko Komori, and Kajiro Bondo. Alright, now that we have our teams, let's pick who will be facing off first, said All Might, reaching into the bin. He pulled out 2 balls and nodded at the result. It will be Team A, the heroes, and Team C, the villains, he said, handing the teams earpieces. You have time to prepare. Everyone else came to the observation room, he said, as they all walked into a separate building. As the students of UA High School filed into the observation room, the tension in the air was palpable. Their earpieces buzzed to life, ensuring that everyone could communicate with the teams while they were in the field. They all gathered around the large screens displaying the schematics of the building that would serve as the battleground for the first mock exercise. Izuku was the first to speak, seeing the team. Alright, I think that we should go over quirks to get a better understanding of each other before we go in. I'll go first, my quirk is stockpile. I am able to build and store energies to use later on, he said, showing them Jolt, Black Whip, and One for All, though they didn't need to know that. Ryuko nodded as she spoke. I can imagine that will come in handy when we need a power boost in the middle of things. My quirk is Poltergeist. I can move objects with my mind. The bigger the object, the more energy it takes, but I can be pretty precise with smaller ones. I can move things as weapons or even use them to block or defend. Satsuna Tokage, with her characteristic grin, crossed her arms and chimed in. I'll go next. My quirk is Lizard Tail Split. I can create and control multiple copies of myself by splitting my body apart. The copies can act independently, but if one gets destroyed, I feel the pain. They're not exactly strong, but they're fast and can overwhelm an opponent. The more copies I make, the weaker they get individually. Shihai Kawaro cleared his throat while speaking next. His voice was calm, almost measured, as he explained his quirk. My quirk is black. I can merge with and travel through any shadow. So long there's a shadow around, I can use it to disappear and move through the darkness undetected. I can also pull objects or people into shadows with me, though it's easier if I'm in a well-lit area first. It's useful for reconnaissance, setting up ambushes, or just getting out of a tight spot. Izuku nodded, processing the information. This is a pretty well-rounded team. Ochako Uraraka has a quirk called Zero Gravity. She can make anyone or anything float by touching it with the pads she has on her fingers. Tokoyami's Dark Shadow is powerful, especially in low light conditions. The shadow itself acts autonomously, growing stronger when there's less light. That could be a real problem for us if we get caught in a dark corridor or room. We'll need to be aware of our surroundings to avoid being caught off guard. He has the advantage over us because of that, but what are the other quirks? Shihai spoke to answer him. Tetsutetsu has a quirk called Steel. He can transform his body into steel, making him nearly impervious to physical attacks. His offensive capabilities are pretty straightforward too. He's tough and can deal a lot of damage up close. We'll need to be strategic about dealing with him because direct attacks might not be the best option unless we find a way to counteract his steel body. Satsuna nodded. Yeah, then there is Yui Kadai. She can manipulate the size of objects with her quirk, Size. She can make things smaller or bigger if she wants to. All I know is she can do it to non-living objects, so we are fine, but still, it is a formidable quirk, she said, leaning on Izuku, making him blush at the contact. That's not good then, said Izuku, trying to get her off him. Why's that? Asked Ryuko, tilting her head. Because Kadai could just shrink the size of the bomb if she wanted to. That means having to capture the 4 of them, and finding the bomb would be a needle in a haystack situation, he said, with Satsuna smirking at his reactions. Ryuko's eyes widened at Izuku's realization. Ah, I see. If Kadai shrinks the bomb, it could make it nearly impossible to find. We'd be chasing after a needle in a haystack, and if we miss it, the villains win simply by keeping it hidden. It's not, and if she likely did it already, said Shihai. Dang, that's a bummer, said Satsuna, a bit annoyed. Right, so we will need to take out Tokoyami first, then we can go for the rest. Shihai would be good at that since their quirks are somewhat similar. Said Izuku, looking behind Ryuko to see there was gravel sitting around a tree, and thought of something. Ryuko, you said there is no limit to how many objects you can manipulate, right? He said, picking up a handful of gravel. Ryuko looked at Izuku, her brow furrowing slightly as she processed his question. Yeah, I can manipulate as many objects as I can concentrate on. The more complex or heavier the objects, the harder it is to control them all at once. But I can handle a decent number at a time, especially smaller things like this gravel. She then realized what he meant by seeing the gravel around the tree. Smart thinking, Yagi. There are hundreds of the small rocks right here, so they are easy to control for me, she said, using her quirk to get as many as she could. Thanks, but the plan should be Kurwaro, and I will go after Tokoyami while you start on the second or third floor of the building, assuming that Tokage can float you guys up there. Once we are done with Tokoyami, then we will make our way up there and help you deal with the others, he said, liking the idea. Shihai nodded, a calm and measured voice. Understood. I'll stay out of sight while you draw him in. Once Tokoyami is distracted, I'll scout the other floors for any other threats and relay the information. 3, 2, 1 go. Said All Might through the speaker. The four of them took off. Setsuna uses some of her separated pieces to carry Ryuko up to a window where they slipped in while Izuku and Shihai ran to the door staring into the dark and long hallway. One of many they would go through. Izuku and Shihai stood just outside the entrance, the dimly lit hallway stretching out before them like the gaping maw of a monster. Shadows danced along the walls, making the corridor feel alive and unpredictable. Kurwaro, Izuku whispered, dropping into a defensive stance and gripping his flashlight tightly. Stay sharp. This place is practically his territory. Shihai smirked, his body already blending with the shadows around him. Territory or not, he won't see me coming. Izuku nodded, his sharp green eyes scanning the dim hallway as he crept forward. The oppressive silence was broken only by the soft creak of the old building's wooden floorboards beneath their feet. Shadows flickered along the walls, stretching and twisting with the faint light that filtered through cracks in the boarded-up windows. Every step forward felt like entering the maw of a waiting predator. He felt danger sense go off and looked down the hallway. Ahead, a faint rustling echoed, followed by the low growl of something unearthly. Izuku froze, raising a hand to signal Shihai to stop. He's close, he murmured. From the darkness, a pair of glowing orange eyes appeared, followed by the looming form of Dark Shadow. The creature's claws scraped along the walls as it advanced, its deep growl reverberating through the corridor. Something he never said to Tokoyami is that Dark Shadow's strength can be seen in his eyes. Yellow Medi was calm, but strong, orange meant powerful, but more aggressive. He hoped that their eyes never changed color after that. The glow of Dark Shadow's orange eyes cast flickering light across the dim hallway. Izuku's grip on his flashlight tightened, his mind racing as he analyzed the situation. Orange strong and aggressive, but not uncontrollable. Yet. Shihai melted further into the shadows, his presence nearly imperceptible. His voice was a faint whisper, blending with the creaks and groans of the old building. I'll flank him. Keep his attention on you. Izuku nodded ever so slightly. His heart pounded in his chest, but his thoughts remained focused. Got it, he whispered back, keeping his gaze locked on Dark Shadow's massive form. The corridor seemed to shrink as the shadowy beast advanced, each step echoing in the oppressive silence. Izuku took a deep breath and stepped forward, raising his voice to call out. Tokoyami. I know you're in there. There was a pause, then a low chuckle from further down the hallway. Yagi, came Tokoyami's voice, calm yet edged with determination. You are bold to step into the darkness, but it will swallow you whole. I'll use 20% one for all. If Jay said to limit it for a bit, then I'll do just that. I'll mix Jolt in there to outspeed him. I refuse to underestimate Tokoyami. If Dark Shadow is in a normal environment and has yellow eyes, let's say he is at 100%. I am not sure what his percentage is now, but I don't know what it is like when facing him in absolute darkness, he thought, as he charged up full cowl to 20%. Dark Shadow, Tokoyami's voice echoed from the shadows, cold and commanding. Leave no room for escape. Izuku activated Jolt to amplify his speed. He narrowly avoided a strike from Dark Shadow. That was close. Izuku rolled to the side, landing on one knee as he kept his gaze locked on the shadowy beast. The orange glow of its eyes flickered with unrelenting aggression, and its hulking form seemed to expand in the dimly lit hallway. He could barely see that Tokoyami was struggling slightly from the sweat on his face. You had to be tough to control Dark Shadow. He couldn't imagine the strain he was going through. Good, Tokoyami's voice called from the darkness. Run, dodge, struggle. The darkness will consume you in the end. Izuku held his wrist as if he were able to snap his fingers. He held his index, middle, and ring finger ready to launch an attack to push Dark Shadow and Tokoyami back. Let's see how the darkness likes this, he muttered under his breath, releasing a quick flick of his 3 fingers. The shockwave from Izuku's flick tore through the dimly lit hallway, kicking up dust and debris as it struck Dark Shadow. The beast let out a guttural roar, its massive form flickering and wavering like a distorted shadow on a cracked screen. Dark Shadow reared back, claws digging into the walls for stability. The force of the attack had sent a ripple through its inky body, forcing it to shrink slightly. Izuku took the opportunity to catch his breath, his chest heaving, as green energy crackled faintly along his body. Impressive, Tokoyami's voice echoed, calm yet tinged with irritation. But you're only delaying the inevitable. Dark Shadow will adapt. And once it does. Kawaro, now. Izuku called, his voice sharp with urgency. Without a moment's hesitation, Shihai sprang into action, moving through the shadows like a predator closing in on its prey. He appeared behind Tokoyami, his body seamlessly blending into the darkness. In one fluid motion, Shihai launched himself at Tokoyami, wrapping him in capture tape before Tokoyami could react. Got him? Shihai's voice was cold, yet there was a hint of satisfaction in his tone. Izuku's eyes locked onto Tokoyami as he was swiftly restrained by Shihai, his hands bound with the capture tape. Tokoyami struggled briefly, but the tape held firm, though Dark Shadow wasn't done. Izuku had planned for this and sent large amounts of electricity from his body with Jolt to tame him. Dark Shadow shrunk as he started to retreat next to Tokoyami. Shirai brought out a flashlight and shined it on the Dark Shadow and with orange-yellow eyes whined slightly. Good job, Kororio, Izuku muttered under his breath watching as Dark Shadow's form flickered and faltered, the orange glow finally dimming to yellow. The beast let out a low whine, its aggressive posture giving way to a more submissive one. For now, they had the upper hand. Izuku looked to his left to see a light switch and turned on the lights. Dark Shadow flinched even further as All Might's voice was heard among the building. Young Tokoyami and Dark Shadow have been subdued. He yelled out. Shirai and Izuku nodded at each other as Tokoyami looked defeated. Good job you two though, how did you do it, he said as he leaned against the wall. Kawaro hid under Dark Shadow's shadow and waited for me to make my move. I used wind pressure to knock you back so that he would be within reach of you to restrain you, said Izuku as Tokoyami nodded. Smart plan, but my team is formidable, he said, warning them. We've got this, said Shihai as he and Izuku fist bumped each other as they started to jog to try and find their teammates. With Ryuko and Setsuna 5 minutes ago. The two of them crawled through the window as instructed and looked around at a room full of light. Alright, do you think Uraraka, Tetsutetsu and Kadai are together or apart? Asked Setsuna. They are likely together, said Ryuko calmly moving the small rocks around her like rings. Tetsutetsu is the muscle, Kadai is likely the brains with a bit of strategy, and Uraraka is probably the wild card in all of this. If they're working as a unit, they're going to be tough to deal with. We'll need to play it smart, hit them where they're weak. Setsuna nodded, her expression sharp. Yeah, that makes sense. Kadai can shrink the bomb, which gives her an advantage in controlling the environment. Tetsutetsu is nearly impervious to most physical attacks, and Uraraka's gravity manipulation is tricky. We'll need to counter their strengths before they get a chance to use them. Let's stick to the plan, Ryuko whispered to Setsuna, keeping her voice barely audible. We need to find them fast and take the upper hand. We can't afford to let them get comfortable. Setsuna nodded. Her expression focused. Right. I'll go ahead and see what I can do to draw them out. You cover me, keep them from getting away. Ryuko watched as Setsuna moved with purpose, her body dissolving into pieces that scattered around the room like liquid fragments. Ryuko followed suit, staying low to the ground and moving silently. The air felt heavy, quite oppressive, but the faint hum of machinery in the distance gave them a point of reference. She had her rocks ready. After a few moments, Setsuna's voice came through their comms. They're in the next hallway moving. They are looking around, meaning that Kadai likely shrunk the bomb already. How should we proceed? This is a 3-on-2 here. Tetsutetsu's head turned slightly, his steel form glinting faintly under the artificial lights. He narrowed his eyes, scanning the room with suspicion. Did you hear that? He rumbled, his voice low and tense. Kadai looked up from her position near the bomb, her calm demeanor slipping slightly. What? What did you hear? I don't know, Tetsutetsu muttered, his brow furrowed as he tightened his fists. It doesn't feel right. Uraraka, standing near the wall, shifted uneasily. Maybe we should check it out, she said, her voice unsure but cautious. If they're here, we need to know before they catch us off guard. Kadai hesitated, then sighed. Fine, let's check it out, she said with a straight look on her face. Setsuna grumbled, shit. Not now, she said annoyed. Yanagi. They are on their way. I'll make my way back. We are strong, but I seriously doubt we can do a 3-on-1 for either of us, she said, starting to reform right next to her. Look where they are, said Tetsutetsu pointing at them. Fuck, said Setsuna. We'll distract them, Setsuna muttered, moving into position beside Ryuko. Agreed. They will likely focus on defense, so let's attack, said Ryuko, launching her large amount of small rocks at the group of 3. Tetsutetsu moved to the front, his steel body absorbing the brunt of the attack. The rocks bounced off his metallic form, sparking faintly as they struck him. That's all you got. He bellowed, his confident grin widening as he stepped closer. They then heard All Might's voice throughout the building. Young Tokoyami and Dark Shadow have been subdued. Setsuna smirked, so, Yagi and Kawaro managed to deal with Tokoyami then. That means help will be on the way, she said, as Kadai grabbed a few of the small rocks laid on the ground. "You two stand back," she said to Tetsu and Ochako. She used her quirk to then make the rock so big that it blocked the hallway from entry. Setsuna grunted out in annoyance. "You've got to be shitting me right now," she said, as she looked to see if she would get into the rock. Ryuko and Setsuna exchanged a glance, their expressions a mix of frustration and determination. "Smart move," Ryuko muttered under her breath. "But it won't hold us for long." "No kidding," Setsuna said, her fragmented pieces floating back together as she assessed the situation. "If we don't deal with this fast, they'll either regroup or make a run for it." "No, they won't," Ryuko said calmly, holding up a hand for her to stop talking. They then heard the same boom from a different area. "She just boxed themselves in. All we can do is wait," she said as she looked at Setsuna. "Listen, Yanagi, as much as I would like to wait, we can't. We only have so much time left," she said. "I merely suggested we wait for Yagi, as he can pack a punch against this boulder," she said, knocking on it. "And Yagi and Kawara will be here in a minimum of a couple of minutes." "Ugh, fine," she said, detaching her ears to listen for the two of them. After a minute she heard footsteps from down the hall they came, and Setsuna nodded at Ryuko. The two of them looked to see it was Izuku and Shihai running towards them. Ryuko and Setsuna stood ready as Izuku and Shihai approached. The sound of their hurried footsteps echoed through the hallway, and Izuku's green lightning crackled faintly around his body, signaling he was already tapping into one for all. Shihai slowed down slightly as they reached the massive boulder, his dark form blending into the shadows. "What's the situation?" he asked, his voice calm but serious. "Long story short, Kadai used her quirk to block the hallway with this oversized rock," Setsuna explained, her fragmented ears reattaching to her head. "They're boxed in for now, a decently sized room and a hallway." Izuku analyzed the situation quickly, his green eyes narrowing as he took in the massive boulder blocking their way. Sparks of energy flickered around him as he activated one for all at 20%, his mind racing to formulate a plan. "We will overwhelm, and that is how we will win," he said. Izuku stepped forward, the green lightning of one for all crackling around him as he focused his energy. His fist glowed faintly as he cocked it back, the hallway trembling under the sheer force radiating from his body. "Stand back," he said firmly, his sharp green eyes locked onto the boulder. With a mighty swing, Izuku unleashed a concentrated punch. The shockwave from his blow tore through the air, slamming into the boulder with a deafening boom. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface before it shattered into massive chunks, the debris scattering across the hallway. Inside the room, Kadai flinched as the noise echoed through the walls. The ground beneath them shook and small bits of debris fell from the ceiling. She glanced down at the shrunken bomb in her hands, her expression tense. "They're in," she muttered. "Tetsu, take points. Uraraka, cover me." Tetsu grinned, his steel body shimmering under the dim light. "Finally. Let's smash him." Uraraka nodded hesitantly, her hands glowing faintly as she activated her quirk. "We've got this," she said, though there was a hint of uncertainty in her voice. Kadai took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing. "Just remember, we hold this position. If they get past us, it's over." As the dust settled, Izuku darted through the gap with incredible speed, his lightning crackling as he moved. Tetsu charged to meet him, his metallic fist swinging in a wide arc. Izuku caught the fist and tossed him back to Kadai and Uraraka. The metallic hero grunted as he skidded across the floor, colliding with a nearby desk. Before the trio could regroup, Izuku smirked, his green lightning crackling, as 3 tendrils of black whip extended from his body and lashed toward them with incredible speed. That was when Izuku felt something way different with the tendrils. He had almost forgotten that they had evolved, but he didn't know what way. Before he knew it, the 3 tendrils were around the trio as they were restrained. His 3 teammates went to work as they tied them up and looked for the shrunken bomb. Shihai checked Kadai's pocket and sure enough, there was a handheld-sized bomb. All Might's voices boomed throughout the building. With Team C being captured, as well as the bomb being taken, Team A wins. "Congratulations on doing both objectives, please return to the control room to discuss your results," he said happily. Setsuna smirked as she untied the 3 of them. "Well, Yagi, looks like you are one smart cookie if you are able to come up with a plan like that, and it works out," she said, cooing slightly, getting closer to him. Ryuko raised an eyebrow, her expression shifting to one of mild amusement as she noticed Izuku subtly using her as a shield against Setsuna's teasing. "What are you doing back there, Yagi?" she asked, her voice tinged with mock sternness. Izuku scratched the back of his head nervously, a sheepish grin spreading across his face. "I just figured it safer over here," he replied, clearly flustered by Setsuna's playful smirk and teasing demeanor. Setsuna started to smile even more now as she tried to reach him. "Come on, accept the compliment and a job well done," she said. "Well, thank you, but please stop with this," he said as the 2 of them walked around Ryuko. Even though Ryuko had a mask on, she had amusement in her eyes. "Oi, Yagi," said Tetsu, his voice carrying a mix of respect and frustration as he approached. He rubbed the back of his neck, still shaking off the sting from being tossed earlier. "You're scary strong, man. Tossing me like that. Not bad at all. But next time, I'll be the one doing that." Izuku chuckled nervously at Tetsu's words, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'll try not to go too hard next time. Sorry about that, Tetsu." Tetsu grinned, giving Izuku a friendly punch on the arm. "Nah, no need to apologize. That's the kind of strength we need in a hero. Just don't think I'll let it slide. I'll be ready for you next time, Yagi." Satsuna rolled her eyes with a smirk. Alright, can we stop the macho rivalry for a minute? We've got a debrief to attend, so let's go before they get their panties in a bunch." Izuku nodded, glad to see his teammates weren't holding grudges despite the intense battle, and glad Satsuna was off of him. He did know that he would need to test the one for all quirks later to see what was up with them and how they evolved, so to speak. The two teams were the center of attention, and the other 32 students stayed back so they could be looked at from All Might. All Might stood at the center of the control room, his towering presence radiating energy. His bright smile glimmered even more as the remaining students gathered around. Everyone, that was an impressive display of teamwork, strategy, and adaptability. His booming voice commanded attention as he gestured toward both teams. Team A showcased exceptional planning and execution, while Team C demonstrated resilience and creativity in defending the bomb. Bravo to all of you. That being said, I am going to have to give the MVP of this match to young Izuku, he said, pointing at him. Izuku felt a bit put on the spot, but nonetheless accepted it. Now does anyone know why? He asked the batch of students, but Momo was the first to raise her hand. All Might pointed toward Momo, his smile encouraging. Yes, Yayoi Rozu, please share your thoughts. Momo stood confidently, her analytical nature shining through as she spoke. The MVP title goes to Izuku because he demonstrated a blend of strategic thinking and adaptability during the exercise. His plan effectively utilized his teammates' strengths while compensating for their weaknesses. In the beginning, we could see that he showed Yanagi the gravel on the ground to use as her weapons and shield, as well as a plan to take out Tokoyami, recognizing him as the strongest. He also showed strategy in using his quirk to restrain the three villains at the same time, as well as securing the bomb. Momo continued, her voice steady and confident as she addressed the room. Overall, Izuku demonstrated leadership, quick thinking, and an understanding of both his teams and the opponent's strengths and weaknesses. His ability to adapt mid-battle. These qualities make him deserving of the MVP title. All Might nodded approvingly, his smile broadening. Excellent analysis, Yayoi Rozu. You've hit the nail on the head. Young Izuku's strategy was indeed a key factor in Team A's victory. But remember, young heroes, teamwork and individual effort go hand in hand. No single person wins alone. All Might clapped his hands together to refocus the group. Now, let's also acknowledge Team C's performance. Tetsu, Tokoyami, Kadai, and Uraraka, you all showed incredible determination and creativity. Tokoyami, your use of Dark Shadow to fortify offenses was brilliant. Kadai, shrinking the bomb and keeping the bomb on your person made it harder for the enemy to locate. Not to mention you blocking the hallway to give you all more time. And Tetsu, your resilience in holding the line gave your team critical moments to reposition. All Might turned to Uraraka, his warm gaze encouraging. And you, Uraraka, your quick thinking and use of your quirk to lighten the debris and create obstacles for the opposing team was commendable. Though you were outmaneuvered, your efforts gave your team valuable time to regroup and strategize. Remember, sometimes the smallest actions can have the biggest impact. Uraraka smiled shyly, rubbing the back of her neck. Thank you, All Might. I'll keep working on being more confident and proactive. All Might's booming laugh filled the room. That's the attitude, young Uraraka. Every battle is a chance to improve. He straightened, his tone becoming more serious as he addressed the entire class. Heroes, remember, these exercises are more than just practice for combat. They're a chance to understand yourselves, your quirks, and your teamwork. In the field, heroes must trust one another completely. Your performance today shows you're well on your way to becoming the best. The class clapped enthusiastically, the energy in the room buzzing as students exchanged thoughts and compliments. Izuku looked to see some of his friends nodding at him for a job well done. He looked to the left to see Ichiro and Bakugo sitting there with angry looks on their faces. He wished that this would stop. They have no one to be made but themselves for what they did to him all these years. Izuku's thoughts were interrupted as Setsuna nudged him, her ever-present smirk firmly in place. Yagi. You're zoning out on us already? He blinked and offered a nervous chuckle. No, sorry. Just thinking about everything. Ryuko followed his gaze to see he was looking at his older brother from what she heard. She tilted her head curiously at why he was looking at Izuku like that, but shrugged it off as sibling rivalry. Alright, students. "How about we move on to the next group," said All Might, randomly trying to ball to see what teams would go next. Izuku quietly pulled out his notebook to write down everyone's matches for nods and the quirks they all had as All Might read the team names. "The next match will be Team F versus Team J," he said. Izuku smiled as the match was about to start soon. Izuku couldn't help but feel a sense of pride for what his team had accomplished. Yet, his mind also wandered back to his own training with Black Whip. He had to understand it fully before the next challenge. He was determined to master all of his quirks. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic, link is in the description. See you next time, till then sayonara.